house.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And
How's the house doing?
I mean, if I were to actually give an honest response to the question, I would say it's doing very well.
Mm-hmm. From your assessment
Yes.
of the house,
Yes.
it's doing very well.
Yes, let me speak like a true Kenyan. Given the research I have done on this particular matter, having asked two people,
Which is not scientific,
Yes.
but
the opinion of two people, which in itself is enough research for me to understand how this thing works, it is good.
very good, very good. So, karibu sana.
Nimeshukuru ndugu.
Nduoko is not with us today. She
Indisposed.
is indisposed. Hopefully she'll be with us tomorrow. But she's listening. And she'll be sending in messages and contributing
greetings.
and greetings. She sends her greetings. We thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room this morning. If you're just waking up, wake up, rise up, get out of bed. It's a bright and beautiful day. Also, if you've been on the night shift, thank you very much for working for the country. So we appreciate.
Yes,
really
we
appreciate the work that you do to keep this country going. We have a lot of conversations to have today. One, we'll be looking into the year 2021, economically and politically, a number of things that we see happening. Yesterday, we were talking about, to the government spokesman and asking what are the priority areas for the government. And remember, the spokesman told us government does not do priority. Government does.
Government does, because government doesn't exist for priorities.
Yes.
Government exists to ensure that it fulfills every mandate that it has.
Yes.
However, there are things that unfortunately must take precedence because of the severity of their nature. Yes. Much as we cannot say that, because prioritizing would mean that you are playing favorites. If there's a flood, that's a priority.
Yep.
If there's COVID, that's a priority.
So what is the Big Four agenda? Is it not a priority?
Big Four agenda, from where I sit, that place where you found me sitting, it's a huge priority.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And First Amendment to the Constitution?
That's a priority, my man.
It is, right?
It is a priority.
So we'll be looking at some of those things politically, but also economically.
Yes.
We know that the government needs to raise money because we know that the government needs to operate. And a number of things that it has to do. Close to 1 trillion shillings has to go back to paying the people that we owe. And then...
And in case you're thinking that it's safe to get out of the water, there are people we've owed money for quite some time now, and the payment is due this January. Around the 21st, we'll be expected to pay a certain amount of money. So if we thought that the many trillions we are speaking of and the debt that accrues thereof was enormous, let's just add to that pot.
Yep.
There's more money that will be required for us to pay.
Yep.
Yes.
And then there are new taxes that have been rolled out by the government. And the Kenya Revenue Authority wants to remind you that there's a new tax called the Digital Service Tax, which is effective from the 2nd of January 2021. We'll be talking about that, trying to understand what is Digital Services Tax.
Well, remember yesterday
when
we mentioned...
When you make any digital transactions, you pay a tax.
Remember we mentioned yesterday also that they want to look at the land rates, the law that govern land rates in this country, and they want to give that a little tweak as well.
Yeah.
Put it this way, what 2021 is clearly indicating to us, or what the government is indicating to us in 2021, is that they are not going to take this matter of raising taxes lying down. They are going full throttle at it, and anything that can be taxed, all right? They'll
look at it rising up.
Yes, if they need to resurrect and bring back from the dead cowrie shell tax, they will bring up cowrie shell tax because they need the money.
Well, then there's also a new tax called the minimum tax.
Yes.
Now, that one, hey, when we talk to the experts, so we'll be speaking with two experts, Mohammed Wilia, our friend from Saudi Arabia. He'll be joining us. And then Ali Kansachu, who is also a market analyst here in Kenya with Rich Consultants. He'll also be speaking to us. This minimum tax, what is it? Last year, around same time, we were dealing with a new tax called the turnover tax. Remember?
Yes.
And they had a KRA officials and we were asking, so how do you roll out the turnover tax? Where you're paying a tax when you're paying the business permit. Now, minimum tax. You cannot you cannot file your returns and say, you know what, this year we made a loss, so we cannot pay any tax.
That's all right. So we understand that, but you turned over this. So why don't we look at that and see what bit we can actually slice from this chunk of a turnover?
Imagine. So we have all these issues now coming up. We'll be discussing and trying to understand that, because it's important that we play on the right side of the law.
My friend, sooner or later, apart from the cow shell tax, you'll hear marriage tax. My friend, we thought we were being taxed in this country. No. We haven't seen the full picture yet. Yes, we're going to be taxed. On the other hand, if we were to be fair to the government, I would say this, the government does need to raise more money.
It does need to raise money. It also needs to, that thing of the coat and the size of the cloth. It has to play that sentence.
Actually, it's not even, apart from that, we must go back to the basics and we must be told what cloth it is and what it actually costs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is
because
it
they keep talking to us about the cost of the garment. Yeah. Fine, let's leave the garment for the time being. What material is this cloth made of? What do the materials cost? How can we source this material? Is this the best way of sourcing it? Okay, now we have the material. Are there other people who can source it better? Then let's talk about the finished product from that cloth.
Yeah.
But we seem to always be dealing with the finished product. No, we don't want the finished product.
We want from raw material.
Yes, because the tax is the finished product.
Is it size or is it cotton?
Yes. Because once we've taxed
or is it
you,
silk?
Yes, exactly. And remember, once you are taxed, then there's a detail of how your tax money is spent.
Yeah.
The Auditor General tries very hard. I was about to say tries very difficult to actually bring all these issues to light. It's an honest task, but at least from there we get a clear understanding. And I think I need to bring this up because the Auditor General is a government employee.
Yep.
So the government does tell us these things.
And so we get to know. Okay, so let's talk about coronavirus as we begin the conversations this morning and how COVID-19 is doing. If we were to look at how we are doing as a country, Kenya, what are our numbers so far? 96,908 total confirmed cases, 1,686 total deaths, and of course we know the number of recoveries so far is 79,257. Now, if we just look at it then from the rest of the world, globally we are doing pretty something. So Mexico has 6,400 new cases in the last 24 hours. That makes their total number of cases at 1.45 million people from a population of 129 million people. So that's a very high number. If you then look at the number of cases in America, of course, which leads global number of cases, 362,000 deaths so far. India with 149,000 deaths. And then Brazil with 196,000 deaths. Then we have, of course, now come to people like Mexico with 127,000 deaths. And then we look at Europe. The UK is at 2.7 million cases so far and 75,000 deaths. And there's something that now Boris decided to do yesterday, which is lockdown. What is this lockdown all about? What does it entail?
You know, from the news that I have listened to, or from what I have read, what is alarming is, one, the statistics in the healthcare facilities. They're just about to overflow. Not far from it. Now, this new variant, as we call it, all right, is causing, should we say, alarm in spades. Because it's spreading. Despite the efforts that are being made, it is spreading. So I think the option that was left, you have the old COVID, then you have this new COVID, is, look, just lock down. Contain it. It's the only way to contain it. And containment has proved to be effective. But then after the containment, remember, a part of what we are now experiencing in Europe has to do with summer. Because in the summer, if we're talking about one of the basics of COVID-19 prevention, social distancing, it ceased to exist during that particular period.
Yeah.
And then people move from one country to the other, if I may use the phrase, willy-nilly. So, willy-nilly has come home to roost.
This is it, eh?
It has come to
This is willy-nilly now.
This is willy-nilly with us here. It has come home to roost. But even as we discuss Europe and as we discuss the UK, we have to look at the continent. And this debate is not talked about enough.
Yeah.
COVID isn't alarming in Africa. No, it isn't. If we were to compare with other nations that are economically able and the numbers that are there, and consider even our population, the numbers are not alarming. And the question should be asked and an answer must be sought for as to why this
Why?
Yes, because there's a big why to it.
This why question has been asked very many times, but I'd like to imagine that there'd be a group of scientists, many, who are trying to study exactly what is happening. Because even by the time we're saying, for example, the Oxford University is working with organizations such as KEMRI to develop the vaccine, they must also be doing the other side of the research of trying to understand, so exactly what's happening.
Actually, they are. Even as we speak, there is research. There are research projects going on in the country, but there's one that I know of that is centered around the Center for Respiratory Disease and Control, which at the end of it, or at least will now give us a truer picture of all these questions that we're actually asking. All right. The principal investigator for this particular study is Dr. Videlis Nduba. So I know that at the end of it, we will have a clear understanding. All these questions we keep asking, we will at least say, okay, one will be in a position to respond and say, look, from what we've done over this area and the sample size we've used in this particular population, this is what we found out. So the trajectory, this is the picture it paints for us. Because this is what has happened. We can then project and say, this is probably where we're going to go, but with the following reasons. Yes. Sometimes a little time and a little more in-depth research has to be conducted for some of these questions to be answered holistically. Right now, many of the things that people say are anecdotal. The weather, okay.
Young population.
Okay. Also, the body is accustomed to being battered by all manner of microbes. So all that. But
the vaccination and
yes,
vaccines
exactly. And we've had this for the longest time. Yes, difficult lives. Man, there are many parts of the country or the world where people live very difficult lives.
Yeah.
So we will get a response to this in due course.
In South Africa, scientists are saying that there is reasonable concern that the new variant of COVID-19 sweeping across the country might prove to be more resistant to the current vaccines that are being rolled out in the UK and elsewhere.
But what is of interest is that for the longest time, scientists in Europe have been saying that that isn't the case. But to be fair, and to actually look at this thing rationally, anything that is new, to be honest, until you've given it time and understood it, everything you say is based on what you understand at that point in time. It is not holistic.
Hey. So this Professor Shabir Madhi was the one who was leading the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine trials in South Africa. So he says he was being asked questions by the UK government and scientists, and he said, well, it's a theoretical concern, but it's a reasonable concern that this South African variant might be more resistant.
You see, the theoretical concern, my friend, that's the premise on which you base research projects. There's a thought, there's a question which has arisen, and the research process seeks to answer that question. Okay? So he's right. From where he has begun, that's how you begin it. And then you'll proceed and we'll figure it out.
See,
remember,
exactly that's happening.
Even with HIV that has been with us now for not decades, right?
Yeah.
We are still figuring it out.
Bado tuko hapo.
Yes. Remember, we have conditions that we thought the world had overcome and had come to an end. They have reemerged. So, remember, microbes are living organisms and they also seek to stay alive, just like we do. So, they will mutate.
So, they'll seek to adapt to
they
whatever changes.
So that they stay alive.
Oh, my goodness.
They will.
Okay. So wherever you tuned in this morning, thank you very much for tuning in. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're broadcasting on Spice FM on terrestrial frequencies, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri and Malindi. And we are also live streaming the show on Spice FM KE, on YouTube, on Facebook and on Twitter. And we'd like to say a very good morning to everybody who's joining us online from wherever you are across the globe. We'll be saying hello to you. Say hello to us. I can see already a number of people have tuned in and said they're locked and loaded for the show. Keep it right here. Shortly, let's take a look at the weather and then today's proverb and the headlines. Good morning.
Have you seen them? Am I lying?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone in Wasingishu was asking me what channel is Spice FM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
What
you.
a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio.
The weather with Spice FM.
You know, it's very cold in this studio, in this radio room, but the temperatures in Nairobi are also pretty low this morning. 16 degrees Celsius. Expected to rise to highs of 30 through, 26 through the day. Kisumu, highs of 19 later, highs of 28 actually later. Right now it's at 19. Nakuru, highs of 26, currently clear at 13. Nyeri is mostly clear and expect the kind of day also to be mostly clear, rising to highs of 25. Eldoret waking up to 11 degrees Celsius this morning, highs of 24 later in the day. Kisumu is partly cloudy, highs of 28. Kakamega also mostly clear day, currently at 14 degrees, but expect to rise to 30 degrees later in the day. Mombasa, similar to Kakamega weather today. It's going to be 31 highs, mostly clear day, but 25 degrees this morning. Malindi is currently at 16. There's some light rain there, rising to 28 later in the day. London in the UK, in this lockdown morning, they'll be waking up to degrees of 3 degrees Celsius and also rising to highs of 4 degrees. Paris in France is going to be cloudy, highs of 3. Beijing, it's very sunny this morning in Beijing. Oh my goodness. Remember, they're 5 hours ahead of us. It's currently at -6. Sunny day. And it's going to go to highs of -3 and lows of -13. New York, waking up to cloudy morning, will be highs of 5 degrees and 7 degrees highs and lows of 3 degrees. Kinshasa in the DRC, clear day, highs of 31, currently at 24 degrees. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. We'll be looking at more weather from other cities later on.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
Okay, so
Nairobi.
as early as 7 hours ago, we had a friend called Musyoka who was tweeting us and alerting us that the UK has gone into full lockdown. And we're praying and hoping for vaccination is being ramped up. Okay? So I don't know whether Musyoka is still awake. Maybe he was on the night shift and he's still awake. Thank you very much, Musyoka, for that tweet 7 hours ago. Now, Robert Bogo has tuned in. Good morning, Spice team. Well tuned in Mombasa. Moses Gashari is in Juja. Good morning to you, Moses. Perfume Boy Olemdiang. Allah. Tuned in from Kitengela. Prince Kid Munene is tuned in from the UK. Paul Sana, Prince Kid. Lockdown for you guys, but don't worry. Cyprian Mora, morning guys, tuned in from Nakuru County. It's great indeed. Godfrey Isaac Mackenzie, Kawangware 56, that's Gatina, tuned in. And thank you very much for joining us. Everybody who's online this morning, asanteni sana for tuning in. This is going to be a lovely show. Keep it right here. So, CT, yesterday's proverb was about monkey and wealth and marriage. Today?
Well, on the same theme of love, let your love be like the misty rain coming softly, but flooding the river. A Liberian proverb. Let me repeat it. Let your love be like the misty rain coming softly, but flooding the river.
Okay.
Yes.
Soft love, but flood the river.
Yes. Doesn't threaten you.
Yeah.
It inches in slowly. If I may speak Kenyanese, slowly by slowly.
Slowly by slowly.
Yes. But eventually, the slowly becomes big.
And then it floods the river.
Then it floods.
Why? Hey. That actually it's from who? From who?
Liberia.
It's a Liberian proverb.
Yes.
Sawa bwana. Those people, Quite romantic, it sounds.
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at the headlines then. What we have.
Yes. Cardinal Njue quits as Nairobi bishop. Star headlines.
Right.
But it isn't the only place where it has hit the headlines.
Right.
Yes.
The Nation as well.
The Nation has also mentioned it quite. Yes.
He resigns at the age of 76.
Yes, he has.
So, basically, Cardinal John Njue, why do they say John Cardinal Njue? Anyway, Cardinal John Njue has wrote to the Pope because he attained that age of 75 where bishops retire, basically. And the Pope accepted that and said, it's all right. So thank you very much for your service. And now you may go and rest. So he has then therefore resigned. Now we don't have a cardinal in the Republic. And he was also the head of the Diocese of Nairobi. So another bishop has been elevated to take over in Nairobi in an interim capacity as the Pope then sees what to do. But the man has served for many years.
He has. I mean, by the time you get to cardinal, you really have served for a number of years. And I like the structure within the Catholic Church. See, he's Archbishop, Nairobi.
Yep.
Then cardinal.
Yep.
But he remains cardinal until the age of 80. Yes.
Now, he remains cardinal until 80.
Yes, until the age of 80.
But Archbishop, no.
No. Which means Archbishop is an administrative job. Administrative post, administrative title. So someone else will take over. Yes, but the cardinalship, if there's such a thing, remains with him until he's 80 years of age.
So if there was a vote in the Vatican this year, he would still participate?
He will participate until he's 80.
Okay. Okay. Some lovely structure when you have a church like, a structure like that in a church.
You do.
Where it's clear that this is a succession, it's clear that this is what happens. Even the Pope, he's making the decisions from the Vatican, but of course he has a way of feeding this information. He has a way that he receives information, he says, okay, so who is the next person in line? Who then rises to Archbishop of Nairobi? Who becomes a cardinal, if at all we have a cardinal? Remember, we had a gap between Cardinal Otunga and Cardinal Njue.
A big gap. A big gap. But also of significance, the things that brought him to the fore, I'm going to mention two. One was the reference to a statement that was attributed to the former American President Obama, with regards to President Obama then calling for a more lenient and a more understanding treatment of LGBTQ community. This is a statement he made while he was in Senegal. And Njue said, let him forget and let him forget. God knew exactly what he was doing when he created Adam and Eve. And then there was this matter of, again, vaccination, tetanus vaccination.
Yes.
Now, WHO he led the Catholic Church and the bishops to reject that government-led vaccination program. He stands out. And in this, the Catholics were, in my opinion, very wrongly labeled as being
anti-vaxxers.
Yes, which was really not the case.
What was the case?
The case was misinformation that people were going on. I'm summarizing it for you. Because you remember, you talk about the Catholic Church, it's a huge body, and within it, very renowned medical practitioners and research scientists.
Right.
So they know, and many of them were part of the team who were probably leading this particular vaccination.
Right.
So many discussions were held, not in the public domain, regarding this, so that it can be understood what this thing is all about. But two things they kept pointing out: the history of vaccination on this continent, and the idea that it might actually be a birth control initiative that was being masqueraded as a vaccine. That debate died down, and I think the whole matter was left to now individual choice, because that you can't monitor.
So, but, okay. So the, what's it called? The Kenya Council of Catholic Bishops, right? The joint collective body of the Catholic bishops stood to make that statement.
Yes.
There's Catholic Doctors Something Association. So doctors who are members of the Catholic faith who came together also, and they said, we are the ones who are advising the bishops, and we have reasons for this. So if you see all the bishops of the Catholic Church coming out to say, no, this particular vaccination campaign, we are opposed to it. So wouldn't you be okay to say then that the Catholic Church is opposing it?
You see, the
The
logic,
Catholic Church in Kenya is opposing a vaccination drive.
you see, the vaccination drive, according to them, seemed to target fertile women. But also,
Yep.
they said that research had found that this particular vaccine also had within it, it contained beta-human chloronic. Now, this one is a really long word. Gonadotrophin, a birth control hormone.
Okay.
Yes. So, because this was found in this particular vaccine, so once that charge had taken, this was tetanus, came the polio vaccine.
Right.
Once again,
Same
debate-
story.
That debate also began. Yes.
Okay.
But you see, again, they were not entirely without cause. The same vaccine, there was a history of it in Nigeria. Children had been vaccinated with it, and the consequences were not pleasant. So I think sometimes it is the phrasing of the question or the objection, and this is where we come in, media people, the way we report it. It is correct and it is absolutely mandatory that certain questions must be raised. If you're in doubt, raise it.
Yep.
Now, those who know better than you do, because by virtue of what they do, should explain it to the point where you are convinced. Yes, but questions have to be raised.
Questions
It is
must be
correct.
raised.
It is correct that they should be raised.
Yeah. But also, you see, the way we always treat, not just the media, it's a society issue. When somebody raises questions, they are labeled as they are opposed or objecting or questioning an idea.
That's a cultural leaning.
Yeah. If you just because you have asked a question, you're like, why are you opposing this?
If you say something that is contrary to what a big person has said, why are you anti-development?
Yes.
And you begin to wonder, where did development come into this thing? This guy has just uttered something that I think needs to be challenged.
Yep.
Yes, it is something that I think has taken root in our psyche, not even thinking.
That's who we are.
Yes, you cannot oppose, but na mkubwa amesema. You're saying, yeah, but please understand, the only person who gets that sort of reverence is God. This guy is a human
He's a
being
human
like myself.
being.
So he has said, but what about this? No, you shouldn't question, but you must question. The operationalization of the Bill of Rights is something we are yet to even begin internalizing. When people exercise their rights, please understand that they actually are within their rights to exercise those rights. And they can question. They can even refuse.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, if you don't understand it, then perhaps you ought to understand it. And leadership does not give you leeway to actually be exempt from it. It doesn't. In fact, when you're in leadership, you are now at the forefront. You are the one who will bear the brunt of these questions because, after all, as a leader, you ought to know more. With the responsibilities come more questions.
Okay. So, Shurage actually tells us the cardinal status never ends after 80. The only thing that he cannot do is participate in the conclave. That's the election of a pope. But for now, he's the Archbishop Emeritus of Nairobi. Okay. Points of information. Now, what are you talking about now? The way, people raise issues and it sort of sounds like they are raising objections or they are muddying the waters. That's what happened to Senator Irungu Kang'ata. After this letter that somehow leaked to everybody.
Indeed.
And, it became a whole point of conversation yesterday. So there was fury, there was praise that greeted Kang'ata's letter as Jubilee erupted. There are people who said, no, Kang'ata is preparing to jump over. Remember, he was talking about some people who are Komerera, according to him. And he said Komerera are those people who are just Ndumakuwili, sitting here, but they are two-faced. They're double agents. So there are those who said, in fact, this gentleman himself is a double agent. He is preparing ground so that if things go bad, he can jump over to Tangatanga side. That is one end. There are others who say this man had just been used and been sent to test the waters and start another conversation so that it goes south and start saying, this is how, it's the people on the ground who raise these issues. And then Kang'ata himself comes out and says, you know what, I did not mean this letter to become public. I was writing to the party leader in my position and capacity as a whip and as a responsible leader within the Jubilee Party. But I also copied very many people, and I realized I shouldn't have copied. Remember, we talked about this yesterday.
What is of interest, though, Eric, if you think about it, when you swear your 10 best friends to secrecy, rest assured they will also swear their 10 best friends to secrecy.
Clearly.
And it goes on, and they will also swear their 10 best friends. And the multiply effect will take course, and the rest of the nation will know what you have written. So there it is. But then there are also those who claim that when a politician supposedly makes a mistake, usually it has to do with them speaking a truth that they don't really want to be responsible for.
Yeah.
No, but that is the truth.
They're just putting it out there.
Yes, exactly.
But then, so all these questions have emerged. So was Kangata just honestly writing to the president? Or was Kangata acting in concert with somebody else who wanted to send a certain message and a certain conversation, to start a certain conversation in a certain direction?
But the conversation has begun, Eric. Because in all honesty, the question now is Central Kenya anti-BBI? See, it's in the context, in the scheme of things, it is a good conversation to have. Because if they do, then you must ask why are
Why?
they? And in response to that question, you may be able to avert possible disaster. But remember, the president has briefing from other security agencies in this country who perhaps have an even closer understanding of what people are actually thinking or saying. So he knows and he understands. More to the point, knows even the players.
Yeah. So he actually has other sources of information. This is just one of them.
Yes, and those people, their job is to tell the president the truth, not tell him what he wants to hear. Yes.
Okay. Time for us to take another break at 27 minutes to 7. We'll be looking at the traffic shortly, and then we'll look at other headlines. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Malindi. They are smart, they are funny, and unfailingly entertaining. They are the adults in the room, and they are here to help you be the best adult you can be.
Just to be very honest with each other here, not all of us are going to get tall, dark, and handsome. Not all of us are going to get 0.5s or chotaras. Some of us have to learn the short guys. Some of us have to learn those pot-bellied people. Some of us have to learn older men or younger men.
Spice.
Don't ask your partner if he or she enjoyed it. I think the approach should always be, if she's enjoyed the journey, she will let you know. She'll tell you, hey, maze, your bus is big. Mi sijaipanda basi kubwa kama hii. Juu hata hii basi, hiyo mafuta tulieka yote, imetuleta hapa vizuri. Hii basi iko na nguvu. Hii basi iko na nguvu.
Spice.
Now into a relationship, it becomes like you've stopped your life, and then now me, I am your life. You see, like, what happened to your life? What happened to you? What did you used to do?
And women are guilty about that. No,
is your wife listening to the show?
Whether it is matters of the heart, finances, or work that's weighing on your Spice FM. Spice up your life.
So yesterday there wasn't much traffic on the roads in the morning, especially because some people were still on leave, but kids were going back to school. So today, more and more people will be getting back to work, and more children will be opening schools. So expect, obviously, that there's going to be an increase in traffic on the roads.
Not increase, horrendous jams.
But
and especially the Mombasa Road, when you consider that there's all this construction taking place and there's some diversions, certain pathways are narrowed, there will be jams.
So the entire Mombasa Road from Syokimau going all the way to Limuru, where? Because there's road constructions everywhere. So you can imagine how that's going to be, especially this week, when children are going back to school, when people are, getting back to their daily grind after the holidays. So that one, okay, we'll be monitoring that throughout the day. Jogoo Road into town, of course, it's going to be building up later on. Thika Road into town as well will be building up. Ngong Road nowadays is a marvel to drive on.
It is.
They look back and they remember the days. Remember the times.
Actually, I forget. I'd rather forget because, man, single lane.
It used to be crazy.
It was a nightmare.
It used to be crazy.
And for the longest time.
Yeah. So we'll be looking at more traffic updates in the next 30 minutes, and we'll let you know what's happening. Good morning.
spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Yeah. They were supposed to be wearing masks throughout the day, and teachers and all workers in the school are supposed to be wearing masks throughout the day. And then, of course, you also have physical distancing and the stopping of extracurricular activity. There's a photo on the front page of The Nation. This is from 91 Municipality Primary School in Nyahururu Town, Laikipia County. Children playing. You can see there's great effort by the kids to actually wear masks. All the kids in this photo, save for one, are wearing masks. But they're playing close to one another. They're really enjoying themselves. You know, it's...
Now, this child actually has their mask around their neck, which is really where it should be.
It just dropped.
It's there. It could be on the forehead, it could be on the chin.
Yep.
Remember, most Kenyans wear their masks on their chin.
Yep.
So anyone observing this will realize
this is what you do.
It's just an effective place to wear the mask as the nose.
Yes. Then there's the other footage that was coming out from all parts of the country in a bid to observe physical distancing. Many schools listened to what the CS Vagoha advised and they used outdoor facilities for learning. Lovely weather, so sat outside under some trees and learning continued. Now, there was a lot of outcry from very many people on social media of, my God, look at us as a country, where are we? And I was looking at it and I was like, this is nothing new.
Not only is it not new, there are many parts of this country where people have been doing precisely that before COVID.
Yeah.
There are times when, for instance, you want to hold lessons or you want to have an assembly, you don't have an assembly hall. Where do you think you hold your meeting?
Parade. It's called parade.
Yes, parade.
Outside.
Outside.
Yes.
Yes. When you have a prize-giving day, where do you think you hold it?
Outside. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But there was some disturbing footage from a certain school somewhere in Baringo. 2 classes in the same classroom. Different age groups. 2 teachers using the same blackboard. Just this teacher using this half of the blackboard, and the students, the pupils she's talking to are on this half of the class, and this other teacher using this other half of the blackboard in the same classroom, and the learners are occupying this other half. And each of the teachers, of course, is asking the kids to repeat. This is A, this is B. So, of course. And then the other teacher is trying to tell them, so, and this one, and you could tell that these ones are younger and these are upper primary school kids. I do not know whether the teachers decided to do this just to show, just those ones where you build up a case.
It's a valid case if you think about it.
It was actually their last resort. This was the only option that they had. We want to teach, we want to use a blackboard, and this is the only way we can use a blackboard.
Essentially, you're saying this is the face of innovation in COVID times.
Yes.
1 classroom.
2 teachers.
2 classes.
2 classes.
As you've been speaking, I'm trying to picture it. And I'm trying to... Very little learning takes place, that's for sure. Not the learning that was intended. There's some learning that takes place, but not what you intended.
Not what you're intending.
No. Can you imagine the amusement of the younger children when they have these older people with them?
Yeah. And they're looking at them and they're looking at what...
Are they going to be listening to the teacher?
What their teacher is writing there, and they're wondering, my God, what are all those things?
And then some of the older ones are looking at the children saying, why don't the children pay attention?
Yeah.
Believe me, it's distraction galore. You can shout yourself hoarse, but the actual academic learning that is intended for that class is very unlikely to take place in the way it was intended. Very unlikely.
Well, teething problems, some may call it, others may just call it, it's a reality of things, but this is where we are. Schools have resumed, learning has resumed. It's happening across the country. We have seen many sitting outside, many using the outdoor facilities for learning. Another lovely photo here of grade 4 pupils at Ngambo Primary School studying under a tree yesterday. The school was last year submerged from waters from the Lake Baringo that was swollen, okay? So they decided we have to continue learning, and the available space is under this tree.
You're talking about the tree. In getting to school, you assume that pupils will actually walk to school.
Yeah.
In that same Baringo County, classes that were to be attended by children in the Loruk Primary School, my friend, wooden canoes.
That's how they were going.
That is how they're going to school. Wooden canoes. And if you look at the headline of the daily business daily, this is Milimani Primary School. Parade, as you call it.
In Naivasha?
No, my friend.
Where?
Milimani, yes, it's Naivasha. People sit down. They are on the ground as the headmaster.
My God, these pupils are many.
Now, if you look at the picture in the standard, this one is of Karanda Primary School in Ahero, Kisumu County. My friend, the class is jam-packed.
Are these pupils from the same school?
Yes, they are.
Oh, it's a sweater that's red, because I'm seeing red and what's that color? Is it green?
Yes, it is. Yes,
the dresses are green. Okay. So I'm seeing the girls are wearing green dresses.
And if you look, there's a sweaters are red, but also it also tells you there are some girls who, let me put it this way, that green, is the color for girls. It's clear. Boys, brown trouser, white shirt. Look, it was always going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
And that's why the debate about opening schools raged for so long. But now it's upon us. Let us see how we are going to make the best out of this situation.
Yep.
Because that is there is no other option left here but to do precisely that.
There's no alternative.
No.
It's open. This is it. Kids have to go on learning, and we have to make do.
Actually, we do.
Oh, my goodness.
Actually, we do. Not much of a choice in the subject here. We actually just have to.
Okay. So we have two conversations to have shortly, and this is about, what's the headline in the Business Daily?
Debt pain as payments of Naivasha SGR loan starts.
Guy.
Beginning January 21st, Kenya will begin paying the 162 billion Chinese loan tapped 5 years ago.
Okay.
That's what it is saying. Indeed, we were supposed to start paying at some point. But remember, the payments were based on the understanding that the SGR was going to raise a certain amount of money, which it won't. Not the way it's constructed, not the way, even when we determined that all containers would use the SGR. That arithmetic would work if we had 3 lines. It would work. And if we also double stacked our containers. It's something that sounds good on paper, but in practice, it really isn't.
You know, the other day I was asking myself, so we have beautiful railway from Mombasa all the way to Naivasha.
Nice.
And then there is this company that has entered into an agreement with Kenya Railways to operate this particular line.
Yes.
Passenger and cargo.
Yes.
And then this company is going to be paid a certain amount of money every year to operate this.
What is it based on? What's the payment based on?
That's the question.
Yes.
And then I was also asking myself, remember that gentleman called Roy Parfait from South Africa who came in and said, okay, Kenya Railways, you guys have this rail. Give me the concession to run as Rift Valley Railways and I'll be paying you. Not the other way around. Yes. Not Kenya Railways paying RVR, but the other way around.
Yes. I run it, I pay you.
I run it, I make money, and then I'll be paying.
Now, this one, we pay you for running it. Convoluted logic, isn't it? Why I'm saying it's convoluted logic is this. Any payment of such an enterprise should be based on not just expected income, but the realistic expected income.
Yep.
So you know that this is what this particular enterprise makes, and at the end of the day, this is what we can get from it. So you work out a percentage.
Yeah.
But these guys come up with a sum. You know, if you look at the whole world.
So the entire sum of money that we are making out of that, it goes to them and we still owe them.
Yes. That's why I call it convoluted. You know, rail services, the whole world, if you look at them carefully, very few of them actually are profitable. The most profitable one is the Indian one. But there are horrendous pictures that you see.
Yeah.
People sitting on top of the bogie, people doing all sorts of things. But you need to ask yourself, why is it? Meter gauge railway. But one, they have the population to ride it, and they have ensured that it serves the purpose for which it is intended. There is hardly any way it doesn't go to. How do you expect a railway whose cost was sufficient for us to have built that railway right up to Malaba, right up to Nyeri, right up to Kisumu, connected to Uganda, and even this route that goes through Kajiado, taking it further to the border. That money that we spent on this thing that got us to Nairobi first, forget Naivasha, Nairobi.
Just the Nairobi one.
It could have done all that. Now, when you have such a situation and you have to pay that back, how are you going to pay it back? Because if it had done all that, you could generate and see and even project and say, yes.
This is what we're doing, and this is how much we'll make out of it.
Precisely. But as things stand, what we're going to do is we'll raise the debt ceiling.
Aye.
After we've raised the debt ceiling, we'll borrow some more money. And then we will ask for concessions, and then we'll we'll actually beg to be given more money with not so stringent conditions so that we are able to. It's not a dance that we don't understand. We do understand it.
Oh, yeah.
Because other countries on the planet have done it.
And we're hurtling down that route.
Oh, no, we are. And oddly enough, we're moving very fast.
Let's take a break. When we come back, now that you've actually mentioned it, we'll look at it. Treasury mouths debt ceiling boosts as the coffers run dry. Okay, so we are at 9 trillion shilling as our debt ceiling.
Only
9 trillion. And we are only 800 billion short of this. Okay? Only 800 billion short of that. Passing that ceiling.
Only.
12 minutes to 7.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, so 11 minutes to 7. Okay, so the back page of The Nation.
Treasury mouths debt ceiling boost as coffers run dry. Yep.
Kenya's debt ceiling is set to exceed the current 9 trillion as the National Treasury faces one of the most challenging moments of preparing the 2021-22 budget amid revenue constraints. Sources at the National Treasury yesterday told The Nation that the new limit could be in the region of 12 trillion shillings as per the proposed amendments to the Public Finance Management Regulations. The changes are expected to be introduced once Parliament resumes after the long Christmas recess next month. National Treasury CS Ukur Yatani did not respond to the inquiries by The Nation on the proposed amendments, but this man called Kimani Ichung'wah, who is the Kikuyu MP, who before the ouster was the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee that approved the raising of the debt ceiling in 2019 to 9 trillion, says unless they increase the debt ceiling by amending the regulations, this country will not have a budget. He says the only way for us to operate is to borrow. And because we're only 800 billion short of passing that ceiling, we need to change the regulations, move the ceiling upwards to about 12 trillion shillings. So we can allow the government to borrow a bit, 1, 2, 3 more trillion. So then we can operate our 3 trillion shilling budget.
I actually don't have a problem with the borrowing. It is never the problem. Even the 12 trillion, even if we went to 15 trillion, I wouldn't have a problem. The problem is never the money that we have borrowed. Because what are we at? What percentage of our GDP? We are what, 65? We are at 68? The truth is, the countries like Japan were 210%. The issue isn't the money we have borrowed. The issue is what it is we do with this money once we have borrowed it. Because if you look at the government plans for the money that we borrow, believe me, they are lovely. And they're the sort of thing that would jumpstart, kick forward, take it on a spin. The economy would be running ahead of us to the point where we'd be dizzy with it, just moving up. That money never really gets to where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And that is where this trust deficit that we keep talking about comes in. So that people wonder, why are you getting us into debt and we are not going to see the effect of the money as we should?
Why are we talking about a 3 trillion shillings budget?
Actually, why are we not talking about the budget that we can afford, the one which we collect? Why?
Why are we so high? I mean,
because
3 trillion shilling budget, more than 50% of it is deficit. So therefore, you must borrow so that you can meet that shortfall. So why?
How much do we pay in terms of our debts, my brother? Is it not $1 trillion?
Yep.
Or thereabouts?
Yep.
So
it's 900 billion shillings.
Yes,
Actually,
exactly.
now if you add that SGR for this year, we're hitting $1 trillion.
We've hit $1 trillion and our budget is 3. So a third, 30%, that's crazy.
It's madness.
It's crazy. If
it's out of every, remember what Mohammed Ulia was telling us the other day, out of every 10 bob that you raise, 6 shillings goes to repaying debt.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. If indeed this money actually was directed and it was used for what it was purposed, yes, this economy would be the sort of Kenyans are hardworking, Kenyans are driven, Kenyans are purposed. Kenyans are not shirkers. They're not going to sort of like say no. That money would generate the sort of vortex that you require in an economy to ensure that there's money for the government to tap.
Yep.
But if there's no money to tap, even if you find shoelace taxes or you find hairdress tax, whatever it is you want to do, we are still not going to be able to raise enough money to meet the taxes that we have, or the debts that we have to pay. We won't.
It's madness.
We will not.
It is madness. Well, so there's all this money that the Treasury is. The estimates which were unveiled by the CS in the National Assembly in June 2020 show that 841 billion shilling deficit that exists in the 3 trillion shilling budget for the current financial year is to be financed by net external financing of 349 billion shillings. Also domestic borrowing, which is projected to increase to 486 billion. That's basically 50% of our borrowing domestic, 50% external borrowing. A lot of it is commercial. Not much is concession. Trying to convert from commercial to concession. We have so much in terms of this conversation. And the conversation about debt basically just gets to a point where you wonder, it's okay. I don't understand public finance management.
Actually, you don't need to understand public finance management. All you need to understand is how it is the government cannot and ought to meet its obligations. Let's start with the county systems, okay? If the government doesn't seem to give the counties their money, but there's stories around it, it's been released, it hasn't been released, it hasn't arrived, it hasn't whatever the stories are, what is certain is that the government has a problem in meeting its obligations. When you talk about money being released for schools, and you'll be given dates, this money should have been given before schools opened, in reality. We shouldn't be saying, go back to school, then in the course of the week we'll send you money. The money should have been sent so that when students get to school, but it tells you the government is not in a position to do that very same thing that we are hoping it would do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Aye. Hey.
Indeed.
Okay.
I remember there was this song that was sung, I'm trying to remember who by, Kenya yetu ni nchi ya ajabu. I like that song. Kenya yetu ni nchi ya ajabu.
Let's talk about snakes, okay?
Snakes?
Now that we're talking about Kenya yetu being nchi ya ajabu, okay. A number of counties where if you are in those counties, you stand a high chance of being bitten by a snake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 2. 14 counties. Even in Baringo, Kitui, Samburu, Turkana, Taita Taveta, Kwale, Kilifi, Kajiado, Laikipia, Meru, Makueni, Isiolo, Mandera, Wajir, snakebite hotspots. 1 in every 15 people bitten by a snake every year. 1 in every 15 people in the country. 1 in 147 people die of snake bites each year in Kenya. The number of people who actually die of snake bites in this country is very high. And this is something we see all the time. You know, it's ignored, but the number of people who actually die because of being bitten by snakes is very high. Here is the sad part. The sad part is you're bitten by a snake, you can get the antivenom for that snake, and you do not have to die. The problem is with the access to antivenoms. Do we produce antivenoms in this country? No, not from a government perspective. We have small organizations, for example, some organizations in Kilifi, some organizations in Baringo. There is a snake research facility in Baringo that's government funded. Others are not, which try to work out, getting these common snakes in this particular region so that you can harvest the venom, so that then you can make the antivenom. Antivenom requires to be kept in certain temperatures and refrigerated and available in local health facilities. But you go to any of these places, like you go to Kitui and you're bitten by a snake, and the distance between where you are, the nearest health facility, get to that health facility, they tell you we don't have antivenom. People die all the time. So researchers struggle to find snakebite cure with no funds. How much do we allocate to this? 524 million shillings is the budget set aside in the 2020-21 year for the Kenya Research and Snakebite Institute, which mostly recurrent expenditure and paying salaries. So the money for the actual job of a research institute, for research, zero.
But this is a tale of war that we've heard before, haven't we? Haven't we come across this same situation over and over again? You're told this money was allocated, but it is only used for salaries, and that's the end of that particular story.
Imagine.
And yet, snakes and their relationship to us has been there from antiquity. This started yesterday. You would assume that because of this, some little attention would be given to it. But is it? No.
When you talk about 1 in every 15 people being bitten by a snake every year, this is a very high number.
My brother, is high.
These are very many. The number of people who die every year just because they were bitten by snakes. And look at where we're talking about: Baringo here, Kitui here. And the main reason is because they could not access
and the reason why we mention these areas is because they are the sort of areas in which snakes would thrive.
Yes.
But there are snakes all over the country. That's the truth.
That's the truth. Hot climatic areas.
Yes, so long as it's warm. It's only in the very cold place where you will not find snakes. And if you do, this is a grain-friendly variety. Though there are people, it doesn't matter whether it's green-friendly, non-venomous, it's a snake.
It's a snake. Snake is snake.
Snake is snake.
Kill it.
And as quickly as possible.
I think it's a conversation that we'll have again. We had it at some point, and we need to have it again. Because this is where we talk about just ignorance by a government, where its people die. And yet, you have a research facility that is established in law, and yet you don't even have allocated proper money to conduct its research. So you're paying people salaries, but you're not empowering them to do what they are trained to do, what they have been employed to do. And the result of that is that people are dying.
But if you think about Eric and think of the logic behind it, look at the recent strike that was brought about
by health workers.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think the real protest was about? It was about this same neglect.
It's attitude.
Yes, neglect.
It's
like nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to bother. It doesn't seem to be important to them.
Anyway, top of the hour. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Okay, so we said Mombasa Road, just expect chaos this morning. It starts all the way from Mlolongo coming towards the city centre. And also, this whole area from Nyayo Stadium roundabout to Imara Daima, it's chaotic both ways. Because the people who are constructing the road have demarcated some areas. They've reduced the number of lanes to some areas, 2 lanes. There's a new diversion this morning at Airtel that then takes you away from the road and then back into the road. And it's going to be chaotic. So just be prepared for that. And then also as you go towards Westlands, that whole region of Westlands roundabout going all the way to ABC Place. More diversions, more chaos, no understanding where you're supposed to go. But the good thing that they've done is they've marked the road very well. So clearly you can see, just follow the markings and you'll be okay. However, reduction in the number of lanes an increase in the number of vehicles on the roads this week is going to be issues. Thika Road into town, it's busy. Jogoo Road into town, busy. Ngong Road into town, busy, but at least with Ngong Road, it's flowing. We'll be looking at any incidents that you need us to report. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Just get in touch with us and we'll let everybody else know. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
It is 2
the
minutes
only
after
way
7.
to start
Thank
your
you
day.
very much for tuning in to The Situation Room this morning. We are live each and every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. In the room this morning is C.T. Muga and Eric Latif. Nduoko is indisposed. Hopefully she'll be with us again tomorrow. But we thank you everybody who is tuned in. Chotiman Wananyuki is tuned. Benson Mumo is tuned in. Prifiam Bodi Ulem Diang is tuned in. Dennis Siema, Team Earphones tuned in. Mwangi Moibaki in Aberdare Sub-County tuned in. Already in Kwamdusi Mwingi. Ondicho is on. Of course, Shirage Moai, who was on the train coming into the CBD from Ruiru, tuned in. Everybody. City, today's proverb.
Let your love be like the misty rain coming softly but flooding the river.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Let your love be like the misty rain
coming softly but flooding the river.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is from, you said it's from Liberia?
Liberia.
I see. So the Liberians are basically quite romantic people, if we just go by that.
All communities are romantic.
This one's buena. Hey! Let your love be like the misty rain.
Yes. Yes.
Hey. Yes. Falling softly but flooding the river.
Yes,
hey!
Yes.
Sounds like lyrics of a song.
Well, my friend, that's what poetry is all about, isn't it?
Hey.
If it's just turning poetry and giving it a little twist of music and you have lyrics.
That's it.
That's it.
And that's what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
So we're ending the hour with talking about debt ceiling, the likelihood that the National Treasury will be asking Parliament to approve the raising of that debt ceiling from the current 9 trillion shillings to maybe somewhere in the ranges of 12 trillion shillings so that we can borrow a bit more money so that we can then run the government, because without that the government will not be able to operate. At the same time, we are seeing efforts by the government to see how best they can raise revenues in this particular financial year. Okay? So in the last financial year, KRA did not meet its targets, but it raised somewhere in the tune of 1.4 trillion shillings?
For purposes of discussion and for purpose of being good citizens, let's make it 1.5.
Okay. So we make it 1.5 and then just give them an extra couple of shillings here and there. Mm-hmm. Okay. In this particular financial year, with the expected and even the projected and government's own admission that economic growth is not going to be as high as had earlier been projected, the number of other things that would be happening, COVID-19, and the loss of income and livelihoods by many people who would ordinarily be able to pay taxes in terms of income tax, not having an income to pay. Companies that were operating that have had to shut down for good and so not being able to pay. People who had business plans and ideas and they were thinking, I'm going to start my business in 2020. They were not able to start their businesses. So new businesses that could have come online did not get online. And then KRA is looking at how else then do we work with this. So they've National Treasury and the government has come up with these new taxes in even in the last budget. So we have now, effective 2nd of January, the digital services tax that is coming up back online. Some of those measures that have been given by the government in terms of, remedial measures, reprieve for COVID-19, like reduction of taxes here and there, income tax, pay as you earn, VAT, all those, then that the government has also then decided, okay, no, we need to review that so that we can be able to get all the money back online by everybody. So all that is happening in this financial year. Those who are able to pay tax are going to pay a higher tax. Those who were not able to pay tax previously are now also being asked, we are going to fine you, because there are very many companies that were not able to raise taxes, and now they've been told there's something called a minimum tax. You have been operating a business. You ordinarily would be paying something, an income tax, after you've declared a profit. This time, it doesn't matter whether you declare a profit or not. There's going to be some tax that you pay. And this is based on your revenues. Last year, we had an issue of the turnover tax for micro and small businesses. It's just KRA trying to widen its tax net and tax bracket and saying, okay, so there are small businesses that are ordinarily not able to pay taxes, but then they are formal in one way or the other because they apply for business permits. So we are going to use that application for business permit to raise that tax.
The one which I really found interesting, the turnover tax. Essentially, from a layman's perspective, I get the impression that we're being told no one is going to escape being taxed.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you do. We will tax you. There is some portion of whatever it is you earn, no matter how minimal it is, a portion of it has to end up in the taxman's pockets. That's what we've been told.
So if we look at the year 2021, then, the way it has started, so the government is operating on trying really to catch up with its own budget and trying to raise money so that it can finance its own operations. Then you have people who are starting a new year thinking, what am I going to do this year to improve what I was trying to do last year in terms of, raising my own money, raising my own revenues and being able to run things. You have Kenyans who are, trying to just basically make ends meet, and you have a government that's trying to do the same. And none of this is really able to confidently sit back and say, I'm going to help you.
Well, I think the question I would ask is, if I'm paying my taxes, I'm helping. I'm doing my bit. So once I've done my bit, I expect this partner, this person, or this group of people with whom I share this responsibility to do their bit. But this is where the question always arises, and this is where the problem always arises, and this is where the trust deficit always arises from. The understanding that what we say is going to be done is not what is done.
Yep.
Because I will pay my taxes as a citizen. Other citizens will pay their taxes.
Yeah.
Honestly, have they not done their bit? They have. They have.
Okay, let's bring in some experts now to look at 2021 from a political side of things and from a financial and economic side of things. One of them is Ali Kansachu. Ali Kansachu is from Rich Management Consultants. He says, get rich, all right? Strike it rich. Ali Kan, good morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the Situation Room and Happy New Year.
You too.
So is it really a Happy New Year, Ali Khan, if we look at it from just a practical point of view, the way we are beginning the year?
So I think certainly I'm sensing a little bit more optimism compared to last year, but I'm highly skeptical that we're going to see a tremendous improvement in short order. And I think, we're going to have a similarly challenging year as we did last year. I mean, the virus, fortunately, has improved considerably here in Kenya, but of course, that was before all the festivities. But more than the viral emergency, we're dealing with an economic situation which has been very severe. And for now, I don't see where the silver bullet is coming from that's going to return us to a path of growth. that's going to bring government spending under control, because really the problem is not around taxation, it's around spending. What we have very hard-working Kenyans, and I was listening to what you were saying earlier. It reminded me of a British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Dennis Healy, who was very famous for his eyebrows, who said, we're going to squeeze them till the pips squeak. He was talking about the rich. And right now we've got a scenario where people are suffering in terms of the economy, and we're increasing taxes on them. And I think we've run out of room to do this. And therefore, I think we're in a very difficult catch-22.
Is this something that one can get out of? And if so, how?
So I think that it's a very interesting question, that. I think if you look at the trend that we're seeing, as far as I can see, is a government which is failing to recognize that the problem is not about taxpayers, it's about the government spending. And until now, they've been able to raise money from the capital markets. They've been able to kick the can down the road a little bit longer. But essentially, all the signals are telling me we're running out of road now. And we're running out of being able to kick the can down that road. So what's going to change is going to be forced upon us, rather than us grabbing the opportunity in two hands and changing and being ahead of the curve. So my concern is that, in many respects, I would have said Treasury is rapidly ceding control to the likes of the IMF and others.
You say you feel like, we are running out of road now. I mean, we've just been kicking the can down the road. We're getting to the end of that road. Why do you think the government was doing that? Kicking the can down the road? Was it to avoid making tough decisions? Or was it just political decisions that were being made not in the best interest of the country?
So that's an interesting question. I think for a long time, I think a number of our politicians were deluded and thought that, money was a golden wave of liquidity, and each time they put their hand up, someone would throw them $1 billion or a couple of billion. Each project that they could think of without much feasibility study was being financed. And I think that's essentially what happened. But times have changed. I mean, you just have to look at our interest payments. It's like somebody giving you a credit card and saying unlimited spending, and then all of a sudden saying, but hang on, you're not paying back every month. So that's the scenario that we're in now, I think.
The question that actually comes to mind, even as I asked that question, Ali Khan, is this. To get here, there's a path that we followed, certain decisions were made. What could we have done differently?
I think that's interesting again. I think, if you look at, we borrowed a lot of money, and like any business, we made investments with that money. And so far, our investments have been very, very poor. In fact, we borrowed money, we're paying interest, and we're also having to fund the investments we made. You can look at the SGR, you can look at a number of other things. And the economic rationale behind some of these simply don't stack up anymore. I mean, we could have rehabilitated the railway, clearly, the old one. We are unable to put through the traffic that we said that we could. A railway project is a long-term thing, but lumping it on the balance sheet when we did, I think has put us under tremendous pressure as just one example. Of course, we had the situation with COVID, which is something that was unpredictable, but it really was a circuit breaker globally. And I think all the sort of, the Achilles heel was there, but it was COVID that really brought it all to the fore. So if I look at it overall, we've overspent. We spent too much on stuff which just which is not producing a sufficient return. And now we're looking around for how we can plug the gap. And it's going to be very, very tough. And for now, we still don't seem to have accepted that reality.
Let's bring in our other guest this morning. This is Mohammed Wilier from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Mohammed is an advisor with the Saudi Monetary Authority. Good morning, Mohammed.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Eric. And the team.
And Ali Khan as well, who's online.
Morning, Mohammed.
I can take it. Yes, Ali Khan, how are you? Long time.
Yes, good to see you as always.
Now, Mohammed, you've heard what Ali Khan is saying, and you heard the questions that we are asking ourselves this morning. We're just basically looking at 2021. We are starting the year in a certain financial position. We are starting the year with certain clear political agenda by the government. What do you make of this? If you look at what appears to be the political priorities of the government and the economic priorities of the government, are they aligned?
Well, Eric, I think 2021 will be a very, it's the year of reckoning for us. I think it's going to be a very difficult year from the economic front. Of course, we do have health challenges also. The priorities of government and in terms of politics and economics should be aligned, but politicians everywhere are the same. And I think priorities that matter to you and me may not be those that matter to the government of the day. And you have to understand also that despite the economic challenges, we are now going into an election. I mean, in Kenya, every time we go into an election, the year before is always almost festive. So I don't expect much to happen in terms of them looking at the economy closely. And there's going to be a lot of politics, and of course, businesses and everyone else always prepares for this year, the year before an election and during an election.
Do I hear you to be saying that because of our history, especially with reference to our elections, that this year, 2021, essentially we will have next to zero, if not negative economic growth? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the economic growth, of course, is not necessarily linked directly to what the politicians will say or do. But of course, what I'm talking about is, the government of the day and everyone looking at the issues that affect us closely. Before an election, always there is a dip in economic activity. During an election also, we lose a lot. So even in good times, the growth has always been impacted on economic, on election activity. And if we were to grow by X, we always grow by X minus something because of the fact that people wait and see what happens in an election. The government of the day, loses a bit of focus. So I'm not saying entirely, everything will come to a stop. But what I'm saying is that a lot will be affected. And this year more so because of the fact that we have economic challenges which need special attention, and also the fact that we have external shocks like COVID and maybe, other external shocks like which are likely to be caused by droughts and other issues like low costs, and you know, it is a year that is going to be very difficult for us in the economic front.
You know, Alikan mentioned this, and many other commentators have talked about this, and this is with regards to government's ability to raise revenue and also government's inability to control its own spending. You have talked about this many times also, Mohammed. If we look at 2021 and what the government has been doing in terms of its projects and looking at it in terms of how it's raising its revenue, what is the missing link between how much it's raising and how much it's able to spend, or how much it's able to even cut back?
Well, Eric, that's a good question, and it's a question that is, you know, it requires. I don't think we have an answer for it. Where we are now, we've reached a point where we just have to look at what is the best thing to do. I think we've crossed that road of saying, let's, you know, increase revenues, which we can't. Let's cut expenditure, which I think also we have now. As they say now, the new terminology is that the train has left the station. I mean, it's simple math, Eric, and you know the team. We collect 120 billion a month. We spend about 50 billion on debt. We spend about 50 billion on salaries. We spend about 50 billion on what is called operational maintenance by the government. And we spend 26 billion to, you know, as transfers to counties. So 25 billion in development. So those are the monthly numbers. So if you just look at those numbers, I mean, then you know our expenditure is on a monthly basis over 200 billion, but we collect only 120 billion. And that 120 billion is coming under stress. So I think we are paying for our large double deficits over the last 8 or so years. And we've always been saying that you can't run 8-9% you know, budget deficits for 8 years consecutively and not pay the price for it. And I think we're going to pay the price.
I'm glad you've mentioned that, because this is something I'd like to understand. I mean, if I read, and I'm not an economist, neither am I a finance person, there are countries whose GDP ratio to whatever it is they owe is in excess of 100%, some even 200%, and yet they seem to be coping. Explain this. How is it then that us, with a ratio that doesn't get to that percentage, we are more or less choking? How is it explained in financial terms?
Sorry, can you say that again? I seem to have lost you somehow, but just can you repeat your question again?
Yes, there is a term that I've read about, GDP to debt ratio. Okay, and I'm saying that there are countries whose GDP to debt ratio it's in excess of even 100%. Ours isn't at that stratosphere. How exactly do you explain this, that we are not at that high level, others with the higher ratios are coping, and yet we don't seem to be coping at all? How?
Well, you see, the GDP to debt ratio is a solvency indicator. We have a lot of different indicators that we look at. And GDP to debt ratio is a solvency, indicator. We have a liquidity indicator, which is the basic one to look at is, how much of my revenues do I use to service my debt? It's a more important indicator. It's a liquidity indicator. It's like, for example, I'll give you an example.
Yes.
You're a rich guy. You own Spice FM and other assets, but you don't have liquidity. You don't have cash. So what are you going to do? I mean, at one stage, you have to service your liabilities. If you are not able to meet your liabilities when they fall due, then every other indicator is irrelevant. The most important thing is now we collect 120 billion monthly, and out of that, around 52 billion we have to pay debt. So you're looking at almost 50% of your revenues going to debt, and you have other bills to pay. So we are now in a position where, unfortunately, we cannot afford to pay our accountants and pay our debt at the same time.
So Mohammed, how do we increase our liquidity? I've got you this liquidity. It's like cash in hand. How do we ensure that we increase it? Ali Khan, if you have a response to it, please jump right in.
Yeah, can I just respond to your previous question, which was about debt to GDP, and then come to this quickly? I think what Mohammed was talking about was debt service. So what you have, interestingly, is, when people compare Japan, for example, where debt to GDP is over 100%, you've got to look at the debt service cost. In those countries, the debt service cost has actually gone lower in the last few months because of the movement of interest rates and because of the power of being a G7 currency. So that's just a point I'd like to make. And we don't have that privilege. And I think we should disavow ourselves of that notion that somehow we are a Japan or we are a United States and we have the power of the dollar or the power of the yen, because that is a kind of a non sequitur. I hear it argued a lot. To come back to your question about how do we improve liquidity, I think firstly, it's like, any business. You've got to live within your means. And it's a rule that's applied for hundreds of years. And I think we're just not doing that. And until we do that, we talk about sovereignty, but really we are about to lose. We're about to lose our sovereignty if we continue down this path, because we're going to cede control to the likes of the multilateral institutions.
Okay, so let's take a break at this point, and then we can. Okay, yes, Mohammed, you can respond to this question actually before we take the break.
No, I agree with what Ali Khan has said. We always hear our politicians and everyone else say, why not Japan, why not the US? The other thing you have to look at is just these countries borrow in their own currency. I mean, if the United States borrowed $1 billion in March of 2020, that remains at $1 billion. If we borrowed $1 billion in March 2020, when the exchange rate was at 101, and now it's 110, you're looking at a significant increase in your borrowing, and that's a very bad comparison. And also, as I say, it's only one of the indicators. It's an indicator that is linked to GDP. Sometimes we don't even know whether that GDP number is accurate. I'm not saying it's not accurate, but it's a statistical, it's a number. But what is more important than anything else is your cash flow. Cash is key. So whether you're rich, whether your GDP to debt ratio is good, if at the end of the day, when your debts are due, you struggle to pay because you don't have the revenues to service your debt, then you're in problem. And as I say, even rich people sometimes struggle to pay their debt because if they don't manage their activities well, because at some point, liquidity will come and hit you. And once it hits you, then solvency is also hit because your debt to GDP ratio again is also affected because you end up piling on debt because you have to borrow to pay your obligations.
Time for us to take a break at 7:30. We are speaking with Ali Kansachu of Rich Management and Mohammed Uliye, who's in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. He's the advisor to the Saudi Monetary Authority, talking about the political and economic outlook for 2021 in the Republic and also in the world. When we come back, we ask ourselves, so what is it that the government then can do, in the short-term measure that the government can do to stay afloat. And then also try to understand the new tax measures that the government has put in place and the effect that is likely to have in an economy such as ours that's trying to recover. Good morning. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice FM.
All right, so it's going to be a mostly cloudy day today in Nairobi. Rising to highs of 26 degrees Celsius. Nakuru, same. Clear skies today, 26 degrees Celsius is the highs. Nyeri also mostly clear. Well, we are in January now. What do you expect? All parts of the country, mostly cloudy, partly cloudy rather, and mostly clear. And so Nyeri rising to 25, Eldoret rising to 24, Kisumu partly cloudy rising to 28, Kakamega mostly clear going to highs of 30, Mombasa highs of 31 later today, Malindi light rains in the morning but also expecting to rise to 28 degrees Celsius, Kampala, Uganda mostly clear this morning rising to 26, Dar es Salaam in Tanzania light rains going to 31 degrees, and Johannesburg, South Africa 17 degrees currently partly cloudy rising to 25, Lagos in Nigeria 24 degrees mostly clear rising to 32. Now let's go across the other parts of the world. So starting from Paris in France, it's going to be a cloudy day. 3 degrees are the highs. UK, London, 4 degrees highs, partly cloudy. New York, going to 7 degrees highs in the day, currently at about 3 degrees. And in Beijing, China, they're going to have highs of -3. That's the hottest it's going to be today. And the coolest it's going to be is -13 degrees Celsius. In Kinshasa, Kampala, however, Kinshasa, DRC, 31 degrees are the highs and lows of 24.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, Spice FMKE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
The Spice Drive with Monique. The official soundtrack of getting you where you need to be. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Something unfortunate appears to have happened somewhere at Kino, Outward Road towards Kikuyu, closed at the Mama Ngina School. Apparently, a pupil has been knocked down by a vehicle. Anyone who's heading up country or Kikuyu, look for an alternative route because there's something wrong that's happening right there. So just be careful. Other roads coming into town, Wayakiwe into town is heavy. You can imagine from ABC Place coming towards to Westlands and then towards Nairobi CBD, it's heavy. And also coming out of town because of the road constructions, it's also busy. Mombasa Road all the way from Lolongo coming towards the city center, it's busy and then it eases up in some places and then you find the road constructions ongoing again, it gets busy. Jogoo Road into town, it's busy. Landis Road, it starts piling up from City Stadium roundabout all the way to Landis Road into the CBD, as well as Juja Road into town. It's also busy this morning. Okay, the people from Thika Road, we haven't heard what you're saying, but I can imagine that it's going to be a busy week as schools reopen, as people resume back to work. So Thika Road, Kiambu Road into Pangani, it's going to be busy. Anything that you think we need to know and report to so that we can alert everybody else, Spice FMKE on Twitter. That's where you reach us.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All All right, 25 minutes to 8. We continue our conversation with people who have a wealth of knowledge this morning. From Rich Management is Ali Sachu, and the advisor to the Saudi Monetary Authority is Mohammed Willier. In the studio this morning is Eric Latif and C.T. Muga.
What I'd like to know, again, this from a layman's perspective, I'm a bit puzzled here. Why is it that we cannot borrow money in hard currencies? Or, more specifically, we borrow in hard currencies, why can't we borrow in shillings?
We do, actually. We do borrow money in hard currency, and also we do borrow in domestic currency. So we have domestic debt. We also have foreign debt. The mix has always, changed. During Kibaki's time, we had more domestic debt than foreign debt, but now that has flipped, and I think we have more foreign debt than domestic debt. And the mix is around probably about slightly over 50% in foreign debt now. So we actually do.
And must we borrow in hard currencies?
Sorry?
Must we borrow in hard currency? If we say we're borrowing from America, must we peg it the way we do? So that, as we say correctly, once there's a little fluctuation in the currency, then we are in the doghouse.
Well, I think, yes, you need to... Oh, sorry, Ali. Ali, maybe you want to go?
No, I think, look, most countries borrow money. They tend to try and manage it effectively via a mix of local currency and hard currency. It's just a fact of life. Your point about FX risk is very true, and this is what is quite concerning, particularly last year as we saw the shilling on a weakening trend, and as people started to worry about precisely the questions you're asking. So, some countries are in the unique position of being able to borrow most of their money in local currency, and of course, it would be optimal. But the fact of life is, just when you think about it, is you are going to have to go to the international markets and borrow in international currencies. It's just a fact of life. But you've got to manage the ratio, and you've got to make sure that your revenues in hard currency can service your hard currency borrowings, and that's the challenge that you need to manage.
Is it possible to negotiate and borrow at a fixed rate, or must it be left to the vagaries of the market?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
I'm asking, this is a theoretical question. Is it possible to borrow and agree on a fixed rate, as opposed to, because the vagaries that hit us is due to the market fluctuations, and when that happens, then again, we seem to bear the brunt of it. So can we borrow? Is it possible academically to simply say, to argue that you could fix the rate at which you're borrowing, even if you must borrow in hard currency?
So you see that...
Yes.
Sorry, Mohammed.
Yes, you can. Yes, yes, you can do that. But remember, whether you borrow fixed or floating, you have to also pay the principal that you borrowed. And the principal itself is affected by the exchange rate. So the exchange rate fluctuation is not because you're borrowing fixed or floating. It's because simply you're borrowing foreign currency. And going back to your original, and actually we do borrow fixed rate and also floating. There is also a mix that they look at within the foreign debt book itself. Now, going back to the other question, why can't we borrow 100% from the domestic market? Is also that has, I mean, you can do that, but, theoretically. But in practice, it has also impact on crowding of credit in the economy. If we borrowed everything from within the economy, interest rates will go up. Everybody will be, all credit will go to government, and that's not good. So you have to create space for private sector borrowing. That's just one of the reasons. The other reasons, of course, do exist in terms of diversification of your debt book, and also sometimes it's cheaper to borrow from foreign, creditors. Plus, also, you have to look at the issue of diversifying your book, your debt, so that if something happens in one area, then it doesn't happen in the other area. And also, foreign debt adds to our reserve. I mean, it's another way. It's been a source of, our reserves. If you look at our reserves, we have to maintain a certain level, a minimum of 4 months of imports. And when we did the Eurobonds, that dollar actually goes to the CBK, and CBK gives Kenyan shillings to the government. So there are many reasons why you should actually borrow from foreign investors.
Now, take us through some tax education here. So the government has rolled out new tax measures this year. There's, for example, the introduction of the digital service tax. There is the minimum turnover tax and all this. What are these, and what impact are they likely to have on especially small businesses? Start with you, Alikan.
So philosophically, I believe that our tax rates were very low and very competitive, and they've been climbing over the last few years. I believe that you reach a point when you are taxing people too much, and people then are not incentivized to work hard, and they look for ways to avoid tax, and they spend more energy in doing that. And I think it's called the Laffer curve in economic terms. And I think so my philosophical attitude is let people do business, let people make money, tax lower. In fact, I think we should be lowering the tax rate because over time it's been proven you collect more money. So I think we've got very knee-jerk, reflexive policy making going on. We're seeing the shortfall that Mohammed described, and we're just saying, let's bring this tax, let's bring that tax. For example, this turnover tax, I don't see how it's fair or equitable. I mean, you're not measuring people on the profit they're making. You're just saying, what about a high turnover business where your margins are wafer thin, and you're doing a tremendous amount of business? That business possibly is no longer viable.
Yep.
So what I feel is we've got a very, very knee-jerk, reflexive attitude. We're not thinking. I don't think these taxes are going to collect as much money as we're expecting. And I think we've got to really take a top-down view and say to ourselves, we're in a weak economy. How do we stimulate our taxpayers to increase their earnings? And as they increase their earnings, we will, of course, collect more money. And I think we're just not thinking about the whole matter correctly.
Mohammed, do you think this is a knee-jerk reaction by the policymakers at the National Treasury?
Eric, I think, yes, I do agree to a certain extent. And also, these guys are in a very tight position. They find themselves between a rock and a hard place. On one side, they need revenues, and revenues from anywhere. On the other side, some of the measures that we put in place do actually affect your revenues in the long, in the long run, and could be counterproductive. So basically, now we've seen the COVID measures, have come back. There were good COVID measures that were put in place from a fiscal perspective, and now some of those measures have been rolled back. The reason is, of course, the government needs the money, but the problem is, the crisis is not over. Businesses are struggling. People have lost employment. Where are you going to? Who are you going to tax? Where are you going to get that tax back from? You are assuming that it's a switch. You switch on and off. I was collecting. I lost about 60, 70, 80 billion because of these measures. Now I'll switch it on again. I'll get 70, 80 billion back. No, I don't think that is going to happen. The question is now, what's the damage you're going to do to the economy? If you're going to tax somebody who does not have, in terms of, from businesses' perspective, businesses were employing people because they're saving some money. That looks small, 5% from 30% to 25%, but that's a lot. In terms of trying to keep, 5, 6, 7, 10 people in employment. So those guys now will say, well, I'm not getting anything from the government. I'm going to fire people. When it comes to households, we are an African society, and people depend on each other. So the guy who has a job, who is saving about 6,000-7,000 shillings, was keeping about 3, 4, 5, 6 other people, alive or going. Now those people will be without income, and they'll come from the government. So at the end of the day, I think it's a balance. Government needs revenue, but the timing, how they do it, I do agree with Ali Khan that sometimes some of the way things are done is knee-jerk.
But also, what's the role of our parliament in this? Most, if not all, of these measures have to go through Parliament, and they receive approval from our members of Parliament. And we don't see the kind of robust debate around these or with strong opposition towards this. So what do you say? What's the role of Parliament in this, Mohammed?
Well, the role of Parliament, if you look at the budget process, of course, the Parliament plays a very important role. You have the formulation stage, and then you have the adoption stage of the budget, and that's where they come in. Unfortunately, looking at the history of Parliament, they've only added more problems. They've never looked at the budget. They've never scrutinized it. There's a lot of budget padding. And when it comes to Parliament, those are the kind of things that they should be looking at. They should be looking at the deficit numbers. They should be looking at, whether those expenditures are actually important expenditures or are they padded. But the problem is, they look at it, they might identify the problem, and they do. Some of them do. There are a lot of very smart people in the budget committee. But then again, it ends up, okay, Treasury, if you want this to go through, can you add 100 billion for me in my constituency? 10 or 15 of them do that. So instead of actually oversighting, then, they're actually adding more at that stage. So I think Parliament, I don't rely a lot on them. And I think, it is just an extra step from constitutional requirement perspective, but I don't think it adds any value. I don't think they add any value.
Ali Khan, I want to ask you this question because I am, again, today is a day for me to be puzzled. These financial matters really befuddle my mind. Do we know of any country that has actually grown rich from taxing its citizens highly?
No, I can't think of any. And, I think we're not at that point. I mean, we, if you look at it as a continuum, we haven't tipped over, but we're now moving to the right of that continuum, and it's a bit of a concern from my point of view, and particularly, frankly, because we have more than 50 million brothers and sisters who are highly entrepreneurial. Really, I've lived all over the world, and frankly, our people, they know how to do business. We just have to find ways of unleashing them, and then we will really prosper as a country. So from my perspective, I think, we're in a negative feedback loop now. We need to break, we need to snap, we need a circuit breaker. We need to get back to a lower tax environment where our people are incentivized and where people will be paying more taxes. You know, take the digital economy where we've introduced a digital tax now. You know, our digital economy is a jewel in our crown in an era when COVID has accelerated the entire digital economy.
Yep.
And we're tinkering at the edges instead of putting a booster underneath it. So to get back to your original question, no country gets rich by overtaxing. It ends up like Venezuela, frankly.
There is this saying that I have read of that, and I want you to dispute it or, just tell me what you think about it, that when you tax your citizenry highly, what you are then doing, you are incentivizing them to either avoid paying taxes or to be corrupt. Would you say that's a statement of truth?
Yes.
Mohammed, what do you say?
Well, look, first of all, taxes is the main revenue of the government. People have to pay taxes. And, it's not wrong for the government to tax people or businesses. The question is, what's the level of taxation? What is every country, if you look at the United States, if you look at the UK, it's always an election issue. Some governments want to raise taxes, others want to basically cut taxes. Again, it depends. Taxes are revenue. And as I said, and I told Eric this before, we don't have a revenue problem in this country. We have an expenditure problem. If taxes go to 100% today, the government will still look for ways to spend that money and more. And that's the point. That's the problem we have. It's not a problem of revenue. I mean, we are collecting, during Kibaki's time, when Kibaki left us, I think we were collecting less than $1 trillion, about 900 billion. We are now collecting almost twice that. But the problem is that the expenditures have gone almost 3 times that. So you have a scenario where your revenue is growing at around 23, 24, 25%, around 17, 18%, but your expenditure is growing at around 24, 25%. This is just simple economics. Even in your own household, if your salary is your expenditure at home is increasing at 1.5 times your salary, or the increase in your salary or income, you're going to have to bridge that gap. And every year when you bridge that gap, you're adding on to the debt stock. And when you add on to the debt stock every year, your interest expense goes up. Now, interest expense is, I think, the single biggest expenditure item in our budget. So basically, we're spending more money on paying interest than we are spending on development or paying salaries or operations and maintenance. So it's not a question of revenue. It's not a question of how much tax we should pay or we should not pay. The problem we have is not a revenue problem. So even if, again, I say, of course, we have to pay reasonable taxes, which will not hurt the economy, but that's not the issue. Even if we are taxed 100%, as I say, this government has an appetite to spend that and even more. That's why they spend more than we collect.
As we conclude the conversation, I'd like to ask each of you this particular question. First of all, we're looking at 2021 economically, the outlook for it. Ali Khan, you started by saying we've been kicking the can down the road. We are running out of road. Mohammed, you've said this very many times as well. We are seeing some economic decisions that are being made that are not making sense. So I'm just going to ask you, how long do you give us until all the cows come home and we have to make the tough decisions?
Mohammed, sorry.
Yeah, I think we are at that stage now, Eric. Unfortunately, when you look at the numbers, and again, the numbers don't lie, we are at a point now where we have to make very, very difficult decisions. And as Ali Khan said, I think those decisions probably would be made for us by those who are going to come and help us. We need help. There is no way we are going to get out of the position we are in now without external help. And that's where the IMF comes in. And once the IMF comes in, the way they do things is very simple. They tell you, your deficit is 9%. We want to reduce it to 4%. In terms of numbers, that means maybe we have to cut about 500 billion. So out of that 500 billion, we will give you 200 billion. You have to look for where you have to cut 300 billion. Then that's where the government comes to you and says, I'm going to raise taxes. That will give me an extra 60 billion. The other 240 billion, I have to cut it from somewhere. So salaries, restructuring of parastatals, all sorts of things would have to come. So basically, I think we are in a position where these things are now getting out of our hands, and someone else would have to come and make that decision. Because
is 2021 the year that will happen? Sorry, I asked, is 2021 the year when all that is going to happen?
Yes, of course. I mean, in fact, I am surprised that I know we are negotiating with the IMF, and the longer it takes to come to an agreement with them, the more it will hurt us. Because you look at our county, we all know that there has not been transferred to the countries for the last 3 months. Simply because we have to keep paying our debt. And we now have new debt repayments that is coming on board in January of the SGR to Naivasha. So basically, we are in a position where, as I told you before, if we pay counties, if we pay everybody the way they're supposed to be paid, we cannot pay our debt. And we cannot afford to default on our debt. That is a nightmare in terms of credit rating, in terms of everything else. So the government is now going to do everything possible to make sure that every cent, even if it is the last cent that comes into its coffers, that goes to debt
repaying the debt. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank
you, Mohammed. Let's hear from Ali Khan.
So I absolutely agree with Mohammed, and I think obviously timing is always one of the most complicated things to work out. But we've passed the point of no return. I agree with Mohammed in terms of the IMF, and ultimately, I think one of our advantages is that the IMF and the World Bank will be keen to support us in an environment where you've got so much uncertainty in the region. And therefore, I think geoeconomically, we still have significant leverage, which will assist us in basically working a debt workout of our balance sheet. But, the balance sheet is now beyond a situation where we are able to manage it ourselves. I mean, we've clearly shown zero interest in dealing with it. We're still popping quaaludes, which make us feel good. And unfortunately, the situation is now, as Mohammed said, if you can't make transfers, you've got a cash crunch, basically. And once you've got that, you're in the end game. The end game can take a few months, but it's the end game now.
Ali Kansachu from Rich Management and Mohammed Ilie, our brother from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Thank you very much for joining us, and Asante Sani for waking up this early in the morning to have a conversation with us on this big matter.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Have a lovely day. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. .5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay. Whoever removed the bumps at Garden City and Survey on Thika Road, we say thank you. There's no jam at this time of the day. That's just what's happening this morning. People on Thika Road are just happy. Remember those bumps at Garden City? So they put up now the footpath. Not what's it called?
Footbridge.
Footbridge, yes. Footpath. I knew there was something wrong.
You got the foot right.
Yeah. It was the bridge and the path.
The bridge is a bit confusing.
So the footbridge is really some good news, and you wonder, why did it take so long to think about that? So, yeah, there you go. Then, those who are coming towards town from Wayaki Way, remember there's that major construction of the road happening all the way from Limuru coming towards Westlands. So be careful. Those who are going out as well, be careful. Mombasa Road, you know, it's the same thing. What's happening on Jogoo Road? Well, it gets busy at Landis Road from City Stadium roundabout. And also what's happening on Juja Road as well, it's the same. Coming towards the city centre, it's busy in the usual spots. And also Ngong Road is also busy, but at least Ngong Road is moving. Anything that you think we ought to know about? For example, people are happy about bumps being removed and footbridges being erected. Let us know. Spice FM KE is our Twitter handle. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
A very good morning to you. 3 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, and we thank you very much for joining us. So someone was saying about 8 minutes ago that this segment is a must listen. Now, conversation that we're having with Ali Kansachi and Mohammed Elia, it's a must listen for politicians, but they are probably engaged in other things this morning. Yes, Ali Kansachi. Lower taxes, let people work and see all that money coming back. Yep. Becky says you should no longer invite into the show any politician who votes to increase the debt ceiling. Into this show, anyone who votes to raise the debt ceiling. Now you see, there's that conversation that it's likely that the National Treasury will go to Parliament to seek approval to raise the debt ceiling from the current 9
They will
trillion
get the approval
to 12 trillion shillings. They'll get it.
They will get the approval.
All right. Without any hard... You see, getting the approval is one thing. The hard questions that go with that. The last time they were going to Parliament to raise that debt ceiling, there was some, lackluster attempt at starting to ask those questions. For example, can we get clear audits of exactly what we are borrowing and the kind of deals that we're getting into? Can we get transparency on this? On our debt register, and there was a small attempt at opening up the debt register for members of Parliament to scrutinize, and then it was taken away. You will likely see when this matter comes back to the National Assembly, this will be the questions that will be asked by 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 members of the National Assembly, and then that matter will just die. The issue of transparency of our debt register, how much we owe, who we owe, what the deals are, is going to be.
You see, ask yourself a very simple question. If you let's for a single moment put on the mindset of a politician. We're in 2021. Next year we have an election. What do you think their priority is going to be? Finding ways and means of being re-elected, or in ensuring that they pass laws or they bring about legislation that will actually help the citizenry in the long term? Is their reasoning and thinking going to be short-term benefits for themselves or long-term benefits for the citizenry? What do you think they're going to choose?
Given
our history,
they will try and balance it. They work for the people.
in my opinion, they won't try and balance it. What they'll do is
they work for the
they'll talk
mwananchi wa
balance.
kawaida.
That's the talk now. They will talk balance. They will talk balance, and they will explain balance. Because remember,
fellow Kenyans, for our benefit and the benefit of future generations.
Yes, we cannot allow the country to slide into debt to the point where we are like then the mentioned countries that have gone into some really interesting tailspin, and then bring and say, because of this. Remember, when you talk about budgets, their salaries are also in this budget.
Yep.
Their allowances are in this budget. Now,
and the money that they make, because they also get the deals as the contractors and suppliers to the government, is also in this budget.
In the history of this country, we've never seen a parliament of, well, the term a group of people. We've never seen a
parliament of monkeys.
Yes, well, that is, the plural term for the collective name for monkeys. But in our case, I'm saying self-seeking, short-sighted individuals in one place. Never in this country have we actually seen such a grouping. Think short-term, unintelligent people. I am certain in the Ministry of Finance, there are people who plan, explain, and tell you, don't follow this route.
Yep.
Man, they're really intelligent people, very sharp people in those ministries. They know.
Our civil servants, my friend.
Man, those guys know what to do, my friend. They are well-educated, they are well-purposed, they are well-driven. Then we take the matter to people who are equally well-read, with equal understanding, but unfortunately, short-sighted motives, short-sighted self-seeking behavior, and here we are. So why don't we just stop talking about the 9 trillion? I want us to continue talking about the 12, or is it 13 trillion?
Now we'll just be talking about our 12 trillion shilling
debt
ceiling.
That's what we should discuss, what we're going to do with it and how we're going to handle it and so forth, because that's where we are. Not where we're going, it's where we are.
Yes. Today's proverb is from Liberia.
It is from Liberia. Man, broad meanings here. Let your love be like the misty rain coming softly, but flooding the river.
All right.
Yes.
Let your love be like the misty rain coming softly.
Okay, you want me to give it a twist?
Flooding the river.
Yes. Let your theft be like misty rain coming softly, but flooding the country with debt.
Bas. It's a hurricane, basically, or a typhoon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about politics, and especially politics of Nairobi. Now, we know that the governor of Nairobi City County was impeached by the Senate last year. We know that Mr. Mutura was sworn in as the acting governor of Nairobi City County. He is the Speaker of the County Assembly of Nairobi. We also know that the IEBC had then declared a new date for the by-election of the seat of governor of Nairobi City County. We also know that yesterday the court halted that process of going into a by-election pending determination of a couple of cases. One of them being that, there was a matter of Mike Sonko nominating somebody to be the deputy governor, and then that whole issue was taken to court and it was challenged on how does he have the authority or the power to nominate anybody to be a deputy governor, blah, 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 blah. So we have that and other issues to be resolved first in court. So basically, you're just throwing tailspins here and there. During these Christmas festivities, we also had many people who are coming out to say that they'd like to be elected by the people of Nairobi County to become their governor. A number of them, former town clerk Philip Kisia. We also have seen some other politicians who've come out. There have been names that have been thrown in, and we talked about them. Someone like Dennis Wawero, who is a core secretary of the BBI initiative, former MP for Dagoretti South. People like Bishop Margaret Wanjiru, who come out and said, I'd like to give it a try again. Remember, she's vied before to be governor of Nairobi City County. There are people, including former Kiambu governor Ferdinand Waitito, who has a case in court challenging his impeachment as governor of Kiambu, but there was some news that he's actually getting clearance of the political party's registrar because he wants to go as an independent, and he has a symbol that he had presented to the political party registrar, and the registrar looked at that symbol and said, well, this one does not clash with anything. It does not look tribal. It does not look like it flouts any law. It doesn't look like it's a symbol that has been used by any other candidate or any other political party. So you're fine to use it. And that whole issue emerged. Wait a minute. This man has been impeached as a governor in a neighboring county. How then would he even be allowed to contemplate in his own sleep the idea of running as governor in Nairobi? Those who are saying, is there anything that bars Mike Sonko from seeking election as governor, despite the impeachment?
No.
So the IEBC and the EACC are the two bodies that play a big role in this. So the IEBC is the one that clears all candidates and allows them to be on the ballot. The EACC has a role it plays because there's the issue of ethics. So the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, through its CEO, Twalib Mbarak, had issued a statement late last year. And he talked about, EACC wishes to inform the public that there will be constitutional responsibility to clear aspirants to vie for various positions. It lies with the IEBC. The EACC has mandated to enforce provisions of Chapter 6, including the mandatory integrity requirements for all candidates. And it says, EACC advises that all persons offering themselves as independent candidates or seeking party nominations for election must meet the integrity threshold under Chapter 6 of the Constitution. EACC therefore considers that a person is disqualified pursuant to Chapter 6 of the Constitution if this person, number one, has been dismissed or otherwise removed from office for contravention of Chapter 6 of the Constitution or its enabling legislation in accordance with the Constitution, or number two, is found in accordance with any law to have misused or abused a state office or public office, or number three, is otherwise found by the Commission pursuant to its mandate under Chapter 6 to be in violation of Chapter 6. Okay? People translated this statement dated the 29th day of December by the EACC CEO Twalib Mbarak to be, especially because he started by saying independent or those seeking to get party nominations, that he was basically talking to Mr. Waitito and such other people. If you have been removed from office for contravening Chapter 6 of the Constitution, or if you have been removed from office or found in accordance to the law to have misused or abused office, then, according to the AACC, you will not qualify. The questions, however, arise if this person has gone to court to challenge the removal and that process, the political process of removing them from office, and the court has not cleared this particular matter, has not ruled on this particular matter, dispensed with it. Can you, as EACC, say, as far as we are concerned, you are removed from office? Can EACC bar this person from running? And these are questions that we now ask ourselves. We've got a Chapter 6 of the Constitution that talks very well. Chapter 6 of the Constitution is brought to life by the Leadership and Integrity Act of Parliament that speaks some things that are very well and some things that are quite tricky.
But what I find even interesting is Governor Sonko, has he presented his candidature as well?
He hasn't spoken.
He hasn't spoken. So, but what does this mean? Now that the court has halted, the process of the polls in Nairobi, meaning we can't have them as big until they determine or until they hear whatever it was his pleadings were about. Okay, now what I'm seeing here is our capacity for understanding the Constitution being furthered. Things which we previously did not understand, or anecdotally we thought we did. This debate about which is what and how is which and what follows the other, it's coming to the fore.
Let's understand the law, all right? So let's speak to somebody who understands the law and somebody who understands the Leadership and Integrity Act and somebody who understands the Chapter 6 of the Constitution and somebody who is likely to have participated in the drafting of this statement by the EACC boss. And this is the head of communications at the EACC, Philip Kagushia, our friend. Happy New Year, Philip.
Happy New Year to all of you.
Happy New Year, Philip.
Good to see you all again.
Good to see you this year as well, Philip.
Yeah.
So you closed the year on a high.
Yeah, there's never a dull moment at EACC. And I guess what happened is towards the end of the year, we had to come out with this press statement regarding the candidacy of some people. And that's why you saw the CEO, Major Twalib Mbarak, put out that press statement on the 29th of December.
But so candidacy of some people coming in to say, there's Chapter 6 of the Constitution and all the other laws that are relevant, and then telling us that, there's the issue of integrity and leadership and breaching and flouting the law and having found to have been removed from office, because all those are well and good. But can you really bar, for example, let's just ask, can you bar Ferdinand Waitito from vying as a candidate in Nairobi?
Well, what I could say is that the mandate of EACC is clear in the law, and we are obliged to advise IEBC. And actually, this is what happens. IEBC wrote to us. They have a list of candidates for various positions in different places, not just Nairobi County. There are several constituencies, Matungu constituency. There are several wards, Huruma ward. There's even one from my home county, Nakuru, London ward. And they have a list of all these people who are gunning for these seats. And what EACC did is to advise them. And in the majority of those cases, there was no integrity issue, except in the case of the gentleman you've just mentioned. And in that instance, we advise that this person has gone through a process, and this is the process of impeachment. So it's not really that EACC will bar, but it is exercising its mandate to advise IEBC that this candidate may not be suitable.
I like the word you've used there, may not be suitable. Why is the advisory not definitive? Is not suitable. For instance,
actually, the law is definitive, because if you look at Article 75 of the Constitution, it says if somebody has been removed or dismissed from office, that person is disqualified. So it is clear that a candidate who has been impeached is disqualified. So again, without focusing on individuals or personalities, anybody who has gone through that process and has been disqualified or dismissed or removed is actually disqualified from running from office. And I think the chair of IEBC agrees with EACC.
But what this tells us, therefore, is that, yes, that is what the law says. So what exactly, on what grounds are we stopping them? Are we saying that they are morally inept? My words, of course. Are we saying that because they have gone through this process of impeachment, it then paints a picture that can only mean one thing: they're not suitable for public office?
So let me take you back to the genesis of all this. And the genesis of all this is Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And as you are well aware, Chapter 6 talks about leadership and integrity. And there are all those qualities of leadership that we are expecting. And what the impeachment process demonstrates is that these candidates fell short. Now, after falling short, they were taken through a process. And that process resulted in their impeachment. So according to us, by virtue of that impeachment, they are disqualified. And that is maybe one situation which is clear-cut, because if you're impeached, you're disqualified. And that is distinct from these other cases where we have people just facing charges in court.
Okay, but then there's the other matter, and this comes into the Leadership and Integrity Act, all right? So where maybe you are found to have flouted, to have abused office in one process or the other, but then you have appealed that decision, either decision of the court or the decision of a political body such as the Senate, but the matter has not yet been determined by the courts. So where do you lie in terms of your legal status? Do you lie in that place where you're still to be presumed innocent, or do you lie in that state where one body that has exercised its mandate has declared you guilty?
So that's a very interesting question. It's probably one of the things that the high-profile lawyers hired by these politicians are going to be urging. On the one hand, you have people who have been removed or dismissed through impeachment. And I guess, as I said, let me repeat, for us it is clear. If that is what has happened to you, you're disqualified. Now, that process of impeachment, I do not recall it having an appellate process. I do not see where the mechanism for appealing is. In fact, what these candidates tend to do is they tend to go to the High Court and try and overturn that decision or stop it or stay it or whatever, which in itself is not an appeal. It is a case which is, as they say, sui generis. It starts on its own. It shoots up on its own rather than an appeal on the impeachment.
Can I ask?
Technically, yes, if I want to be very technical, I will say that the case which has gone to court is not.
It's not an appeal.
What I want to find out is, again, from a layman's perspective, does the High Court have the powers to overturn what the Senate had put in motion? Can they overturn or overthrow
a decision of an independent organ such as the Senate?
Can they?
So here's the thing, with the judiciary, again, another independent arm of this government, they will look at all the facts and they will look at the procedures. And supposing something was not followed to the letter, they may find that there was a weakness in the process, or maybe the facts that were presented were not accurate, and so on and so forth. And that is why we have a judiciary, because a judiciary is what we call an independent arbiter. The judiciary sits there objectively and looks at all the facts and then compares that to the law and comes to a decision. So they could find, for instance, if the proper process was not followed, then even if the ultimate decision may have been accurate, sometimes the court goes around and says, well, you didn't follow the proper procedure. Follow the proper procedure so that this person's rights under the Constitution are also protected.
So at that point, that's when now the EACC's advice to IEBC would be, all right, so this person had been removed, but the court has found that their rights were flouted.
Yes, because you see, everybody has this right of access to justice, and sometimes it is a bit frustrating because you feel like the will of Kenyans is to have leaders of integrity, and if they have been removed through a process which we are familiar with, which is the impeachment, we are now wondering why they are rushing to court. But these people are entitled to their day in court. And the beauty of going to court is that if they do not succeed there, they cannot turn around and say it was unfair how they were removed.
Around 2014 or 2015, there had been a judgment by Justice Mombi Ngoge on a particular case, for example, involving Ferdinand Waitito, where she had found that he was not suitable to hold public office. For some reason, he had been nominated for some seat, and there was a whole matter like that. And then, a couple of months, or is it less than a year later, he vied for a parliamentary by-election, and he was cleared to participate. So where is it that then the EACC performing its legal mandate, the IEBC performing its legal mandate, would go ahead and still clear a candidate who has been declared unfit by a competent court?
A competent arbiter.
Independent.
Yes. Independent arbiter.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not sure I recall the reasons for that finding by Lady Justice Mombi Ngoge. You said 2014, 2015. But as I said, we'd like to distinguish the cases for impeachment and the instances where somebody is facing criminal charges in court. And this is perhaps the challenge for IEBC. IEBC will feel like the Constitution says that unless all avenues of appeal are exhausted, you cannot really bar this person. This person is not disqualified until all his appeals are exhausted. And that is why we have a tricky situation. So you have somebody who has been charged, yes. And in this case, some of these candidates are charged with corruption, isn't it?
Yep.
So they have been charged with corruption before the Chief Magistrate. The case is ongoing. I have not been convicted yet. And even if I do get convicted, I have at least 3 appeals, because I can go to the High Court, I can go to the Court of Appeal, and ultimately maybe the Supreme Court. So because that is how the Constitution has framed it, that these people have not exhausted their appeals, perhaps that is a challenge for IEBC. IEBC does not feel it has a mechanism to outrightly say, I am barring you because you have been charged.
And this is where now the tricky bit comes in, Philip, isn't it? Because so we have a law that says that you shall give the person the right to exercise their, judicial process and seek justice in court. And one section of the judiciary, let's say the magistrate's court, has actually found this person guilty and convicted them, but the person has lodged an appeal. Now, you come as the EACC and the IEBC, and the person wants to be elected by the people, and you cannot stop them. Isn't that like shooting ourselves in the foot?
Well, I don't think is that we cannot stop them. We execute the mandate the way it is given to us by the law. But here's the thing. Even if there's a certain challenge on the part of IEBC because IEBC feels the mechanism for barring is not adequate, nothing stops us as EACC from going to court and asking the court to pronounce itself on whether this person is fit to run. There's absolutely nothing that stops us. EACC is capable of suing and being sued, and that happens all the time. So we can go to court and ask the court to interpret that section of the law based on these facts. So this person has been charged in court. The reason he's being charged is because he's abusing his position of public trust.
Yeah.
Is this really the right person to clear, to vie for another position of public trust? That is a question we could go to court and ask.
Is it that you haven't gotten to a point where you'd like to go to court on such a case? Because then, if you went and sought such, then you'd get the president to apply in future cases.
Well, the fact that we're even discussing this today, Latif, is a sign of progress, and especially at the level at which we're discussing it. And progress is a slow process. 10 years ago, nobody was discussing these kind of things. Now, in terms of cases, it's not that we have never tried. In fact, we had one case for I think a member of parliament in one of those Meru constituencies. And one of the challenges we had is that apparently the gentleman had declared that he had a degree, and then on the basis of that degree he got a master's, but we found the degree had issues. So we were saying that this person was not fit. And we did not succeed in that case, but we're still fighting it on appeal. So it's not so much that we have not reached the point where we can go to court, but in this case, if it was clear and egregious, like in the case of these candidates you mentioned, we can go to court and ask the court to pronounce itself on that issue.
And when you say pronounce itself, what do you mean exactly?
So because you have laid down all these facts before the court and you're telling the court, look at this guy was a governor, he was an MP, he was a senator, whatever he was, he participated in corruption, he abused his office, there was conflict of interest, embezzlement, and all those criminal offenses. We do not want this first person to be cleared to vie, because what we're doing is we are putting the fox among the chickens once again.
Mm-hmm.
The fox in the hen house, huh?
Yes, exactly.
But if we were to, let us say, I want to imagine an invigorated and multi-financed ethics and anti-corruption. Would you then say that if this was the case, I'm looking at your budget and I'm saying increase it tenfold. This is imaginary, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you then be in a position to bring to book all these tiresome individuals whom we keep hearing of and who keep abrogating the law, doing what they see fit, and essentially putting the lives of the common mwananchi at peril? Because when you misuse government funds, that's precisely what you do, in my view.
Absolutely. In fact, what you've mentioned, something like enhancement of budget, is merely one method of strengthening the institution. And it's not just EACC. Remember, in this criminal justice chain, EACC does the investigation part. So let's say we're dealing with a county governor who is accused of corruption.
Yes.
We've done the investigation. We've made recommendations. We make findings and make recommendations. The recommendations go to the office of the DPP. The DPP agrees with EACC in approximately 95% of the cases. And the DPP is another independent institution which requires that kind of strengthening, what you mentioned, Mr. Moga, about budget. Then it goes from there to the judiciary, another institution which probably needs strengthening. So if it could happen, or the financing or the budget is just one method, but the strengthening of the institutions is key, because as I said, it's a chain. And this brings me back to the question of this person who has been charged. You know, the person who has been charged, sio kuwekelewa. You know, you're not inventing crimes or offenses against this person. This is a person who a report has been made, investigations have been conducted, and documents collected, interviews done, and findings made. Now, when the findings are made and they go to the DPP, and even if the DPP says, I want you to improve this and that, ultimately the DPP concurs with EACC. And this person goes to court and takes plea. So it is not a small matter that somebody has been charged. It's a very serious thing. So the question I am asking is this the same person you now want to go and take a position of public trust supervising public resources?
That's indeed a very big question. Let's take a break at this point. 8:30. We have the EACC communications boss, Philip Kagushia, with us. Now, the matter we're discussing this morning is a matter that has been, there in public debate over the Christmas period. There are some people who all they were doing around the table as well, kulaing machoma and chapatis over Christmas is, how can these guys clear someone like this to vie? Is it okay for such people to be clear to vie? So we want you to participate in this conversation now. 0719-012-600. Engage with Philip. He's here with us. What is it that can be done to ensure that we do not get wrong candidates in the ballot for an election? What is the role of the citizen in this? What is the role of the institutions that we have established in this country, such as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, in ensuring that we lock out unsuitable candidates from the ballot, but also at the same time ensuring that the will of the people is respected? Okay, 8:30. Time for us to take a break, take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly. 0719-012-600.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Maritime Tips brought to you by Kenya Maritime Authority. Precautions for boat owners, crew and passengers. Keep a distance of 2 meters between each other. Put on your masks. Sanitize your hands. Practice coughing and sneezing etiquette. Disinfect life jackets regularly. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces on board the boats and vessels, such as steering wheel, safety and guardrails, and seats. Provide disposal bins with lids on board boats and vessels. Limit passenger capacity to 50%. Do not overload your vessel. Observe government curfew times. Stay home if you have flu-like symptoms. Stay safe. Stop spread of coronavirus. Kenya Maritime Authority for safe and efficient water transport.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
All right, so it's that January season across the country, so you know what you're not expecting today. You're not expecting rainy parts of the country. What you have is partly sunny, and mostly cloudy parts of the country. So Nairobi, for example, partly sunny. Currently at 17, it's going to rise to 26 later in the day. Nakuru, same, sunny, going to rise to 26. Nyeri, mostly cloudy day at 25. Eldoret, mostly cloudy day at 24. Kisumu, sunny at 28. Kakamega, partly sunny at 30. Mombasa, light rains, at 31. Malindi, it was raining earlier in the morning. Now it's partly sunny. It's going to rise to 28. Kampala in Uganda, mostly sunny day at 26. Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, mostly cloudy at 31. Johannesburg in South Africa, sunny at 25. Lagos in Nigeria, light rains at 32. And Kinshasa in the DRC, mostly cloudy day at 31. So let's move to other parts of the world. New York is going to wake up to a very cloudy morning at 4 degrees Celsius. In the UK, London is going to have a mostly cloudy day at 4 degrees Celsius as well. Paris in France is going to have light rains and snow, 3 degrees highs and lows of 2 degrees. And Beijing, China, is now very warm. It's -3. Very warm. It's going to remain that at -3 and very warm. And then it will be very cold later on at night at -14 degrees Celsius. It's the kind of weather you have around the world. Good morning.
Chilled Spice. Traffic.
So there's this issue of how we behave on the roads. So 1, you're a pedestrian. 2, you're a cyclist, either riding a bicycle or motorcycle. And 3, you are driving a motor car. How you treat one another is a huge matter of concern. We've seen a number of complaints from cyclists, for example, motorcycle people, on how they are treated on the road, and how drivers as well complain about how motorbike people, especially border riders, behave on the road. So a lot of courtesy is required on this particular matter. So there was an accident earlier this morning somewhere in Kino, where a child who was going to school was knocked down by a vehicle, and that caused a bit of a snarl up there. So that is something that needs to be looked at. Other parts of the country, as we look into getting into town CBD today, more and more people getting back to work. Schools have reopened, so children are going to school early in the morning. And now traffic on Thika Road has picked up. Traffic on Mombasa Road has picked up. Traffic on Jugo Road is starting to dissipate. Traffic on Juja Road is starting to dissipate as well, but it's still high. And also traffic on Gong Road is still high, all the way coming from Karen towards the city centre, especially when you start getting now to the lights at the junction and coming down towards the City Mortuary roundabout. It's going to be busy. And then into town, busy as well.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
To join the conversation and engage with us, engage with Philip Kagushia, spokesperson for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, on the matter of clearing of candidates who many people believe are not suitable to be cleared to participate in an election, but the law may find them suitable. In some cases, the law may find them unsuitable, where the EACC may advise the IEBC that this person may not be suitable. The IEBC may look at the law and may choose to agree with the EACC, or may also look at the law and think, all right, but our hands are tied, we've got to clear this person. Philip, as we continue this conversation and as we wait for callers to call in, and also those who are online to raise their questions and concerns, there's a matter of you have taken a particular leader to court. You've gone through the process, 10 years in process, in court. Person has been found guilty, person has been convicted, person has been sentenced and even fined hefty amounts of money, historical amounts of money. Person has lodged an appeal, person is still in parliament. So what's up with that? Person is still earning a salary from taxpayers whom was accused of defrauding and convicted by a court of law of defrauding.
And remember, Latif, because that person is a high-level politician, he's still within the circles of influence. So we don't know who he's talking to, trying to find his way out of this mess he got himself into in the first place. So it's really a challenge. But here's the thing, we follow the Constitution, and if, for example, this individual is a member of Parliament, and you go to the Constitution and you look at Article 99. It is Article 99 and the drafters of the Constitution who felt that until this person has exhausted all avenues of appeal, you cannot then say he is disqualified. Now, what is the solution here? The solution here is, as CT said, you strengthen the institutions. You help including the judiciary so that the judiciary can finish the appellate process in the shortest time practicable. You can keep running, but ultimately these cases will be concluded. So my feeling is that in a case like that, this hypothetical member of parliament, his appeal is ongoing. It will be concluded fairly soon. I think before Easter, Latif, we will be talking about a decision by the Court of Appeal. And then we will revisit this issue and see whether this person should be running for MP.
But they not have exhausted all the avenues for appeal.
Yes, and again, at that point, there will be another opportunity. I think they have another bite at the cherry because there's the option of the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court does not accept all appeals. It doesn't take appeals kienyeji. There are certain thresholds you have to meet. So we will cross that bridge when you get to it. But you've mentioned something which is very interesting because you've spoken about many people think that these candidates should not be vying. And I'm not sure that is accurate. Is it really many people? Because
Yes, if we said most, it would be a problem. But if you said many, most, now that's not really debatable.
There are more than 3.
It's active imagination. But
I think City, you've hit the nail on the head. You've understood my point. If truly most people felt these candidates are not suitable, they would not be in office, and we would not be having this kind of debate. And I would just like to take this opportunity to mention that apart from the law enforcement work that EACC has been doing over the years, we also do prevention. And prevention includes education, training, and public awareness. And that is why we go to the people on the ground and we educate them and we tell them this is corruption, these are the effects of the corruption, so that they can make decisions for themselves. I have a theory that the best vetting and the most effective vetting is at the ballot. Twende kwa debe tungoe hawa watu.
I agree with you, but I for purposes of discussion, I'll suspend that agreement and place it in the realm of theory. And for this reason, I theoretically also believe that we as a country actually like corruption. We actually like theft. We actually promote theft. We actually promote graft. We actually promote nepotism. All these vices that the department that you work for is trying to actually put a halt to is something that is even encouraged by our people. Because if you listen to people talking, just anecdotally speaking, of course, they don't condemn corruption. What they condemn is how it is they themselves were not involved in that process of money making. It's like the institution of corruption, and I'm calling it that, has been accepted, and it's a normal part. The only time we complain is if someone whom we don't know is participating and benefiting, or someone has benefited, but we feel our share has not arrived at our doorstep. So even as we fight at the top, the people who support these individuals or who support these political systems support corruption. So your fight, your work, as they say, is cut out.
But then, we the people, the ones who you're saying have really accepted and we promote and we participate in corruption, are still the same people who have employed Philip and his colleagues and created an institution called Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
Yes.
Explain.
Remember, that is not difficult to explain because we are the same people. If you look at the percentage of the religious inclination that our people have, 80-something approaching 90% of our people declare themselves to be Christian. So there are certain values that Christians are supposed to have. Now enter the national hypocritical positions that we have. We want to say what we know is right, but we do not do what we know to be right. So again, that is actually who we are.
Duplicitous, as you call it.
Even if you look at church elections, churches that have elections, you will be amazed at how similar those elections are to these national elections where we have for MCAs, money changes hands. You'll be amazed and you'll actually wonder, goodness gracious me. Now, if that happens in the church, what do you think is the thinking of those people who participate in those positions? Now, disclaimer here. I am not saying that all individuals who are involved in these processes do that, but it happens and it isn't something minuscule. It is wide-scale and people talk about it openly. So, if that is the situation that we are in, when I tell Philip that they've got their work cut out for them, they do.
Which work is that? Converting us from being
it's not converting.
Lovers of corruption to haters of corruption.
It's like you are trying to swim across a strange river that has currents flowing from both sides. One is going upstream, another current is going upstream. So your system can get really confused about what you need to do with this. Now, when you have a situation, for instance, where people will tell you openly, this person, if I may use a Kenyan phrase, hajachota. Now, it means it's expected. Yes, we are going through this process, but we expect you to play your part. And your part is furnish us with the funds. It is an acceptable practice in our political system in the country. Acceptable. From the very top to the very bottom, if I may use the phrase. It's accepted. So, when I say the work is cut out...
If you allow me to jump in
please.
Right there. Because I think City sounds like he has been sharing notes with my professor about corruption. Because there are things like the sociology of corruption, the anthropology of corruption, the economics of corruption. It is so widespread that if you're relying on the traditional law enforcement methods, that in itself will not succeed. We need to look at everything, and the biggest challenge for anti-corruption, campaigners and fighters, because it's not just the ACC. The biggest challenge is changing the hearts and minds of Kenyans. It's not so much compiling a file and taking it to court and having somebody charged. That is what we do. That is our bread and butter. But the harder thing, because hata huyo ameshtakiwa, you still find them in another scandal a few years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part is changing the hearts and minds of Kenyans. So as the city says, so that this person can say it is wrong to do this for whatever reason. And if I give the analogy of, say, littering in developed countries or the use of safety belts, these are generational things. We still litter as if we don't know this is our country and this is our environment we are choking. And my theory is somebody who does not think twice about throwing out a plastic bottle of soda from a moving vehicle, that person cannot internalize that it is wrong to steal. But the moment we evolve, and as I said, CT, this is a generational thing, so we are talking 25 years. The moment we evolve and we can deal with simple things like even littering, then that is a stage we'll internalize this resistance to corrupt practices.
The generation I belong to have a tendency of looking at the younger generation and making it appear as though all faults lie with that generation. This is a generational issue. It happens to other generations. The younger generation always thinking that the older generation know nothing about what's going on in life, etc., etc. However, not apportioning blame but speaking fact, my generation has contributed significantly to the situation that has made it possible for people like you, my brother, to have the job you have, because we have contributed to the corrupt practices in this country like no other generation before us.
What was your motivation? What motivated your generation to get into this business?
Conspicuous consumption, opulence, the need to appear to be okay, where okay means that materially you had more than the other person. What we see younger people doing is what they pick up from those who are older. The value systems are picked up. Forget this teaching it in school. It's imbued. You look, you see. We're talking about face masks. Many parents don't wear face masks, even if they have. So children see it. Now you want that child to wear a face mask going to school?
The whole day.
They'll wear it going to school as part of the uniform. They know they can't remove the uniform. The face mask, they can definitely remove, and they'll remove it. They'll even exchange face masks. Yours looks better than mine. Give me yours and I'll take mine home.
I'll bring you tomorrow.
Yes. We do not understand just how corrosive the power of example is or how positive it can be. If corruption is spoken of in the highest offices in the land and the one slightly lower, what do you think is going to happen in the lower offices?
Let's go to the phone lines as we bring in Philip to respond to this. Jack calling in from Eldoret. Good morning.
Morning to you.
How are you today, Jack? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. It has been a long time since we had a conversation in the morning.
Yep.
But now I'm happy because at least we are back. You can see life and just go on.
Asante.
So, alafu unajua hii ya corruption.
Yes, Jack.
Lakini nimekuwa nikiomba Mungu tu sana because utasikia tu vaccine zimepatikana zimefika Tanzania, vaccine zimepotea. So utasikia tunaanza scandal ya pesa ya vaccine ya corona very soon. That is the next project. Unajua shida yetu ni moja, our problem is one tungeita wizi, we could not be having problem, but tumeipamba jina mzuri tunaita corruption. So inakaa kitu safi. So tungesema this thing ni wizi, ingekuwa poa at least.
If we call it theft and robbery.
Tuseme huyu mtu ni mwizi ameiba vitu ya watu, then it could be a very, hata mtu angeogopa, but tunaipea jina mzuri sana, inakaa malaika. Unajua the main cause of corruption inaanza ukiwa nyumbani mzazi anataka kutuma duka na kwambia I'll give you sweet just go. Sasa una build hiyo corruption, unaona? Take an example in a very simple primary school, unaona? Head teacher amesema tutoe 50 bob ya exam, si ndio? Akisema hivyo anaambia class teacher akifika pale anaongeza yake 50, anasema tutoe ngapi? 100 ya exam, si ndio? Anaambia mwanafunzi tutoe 100 ya exam, si ndio? Sasa pia mwanafunzi pia anajua pesa yenye principal amesema sio 100, ni 50, si ndio? Lakini anajua very well class teacher ameongeza 50 ingine. Sasa badala aende aokoe aseme ilikuwa pesa kidogo, pia mwanafunzi akipewa aende nyumbani alete 100, anasema 150. Unaona? Sasa ikifika pale nyumbani ameambiwa 150, anaambia mama ni 150, si ndio? Mama pia anaenda anaambia mzee ni 200. Sasa unapata the money that comes
na mzee anaambia nani 250?
Sasa mzee ndio anatoa pesa. Sasa unaona? Akitoa hiyo 250, imagine the money that teaches to
the money that is for exams was 50 bob.
Was 50 bob. Angalia pesa ambayo inatoka juu. How much it is? Unaona?
Inatembea.
Jack, that is a beautiful analogy.
Yeah, that is it.
Thank you, Jack.
That is the same thing which is happening now, unaona? Kibanda ingine imejengwa pale kwa barabara. I'm like, hii kitu hata mimi naweza sukuma na mkono yanguke. Then ukienda kuangalia huko unaambiwa ni project ya 4 million. Sasa the best thing we can do sisi wenyewe ndio, I think sisi wenyewe ndio tuko na shida, because unasema police ni corrupt na ndio unampea ongo. Unless if we change our way of thinking.
Kama unasema politician ni corrupt na ndio ulimpigia kura.
Imagine mimi kuna msanii alikuja hapa hivi, sitamtaja jina, anakuja kuomba vote, si ndio? So I had people saying that, jamaa hata hivi by chai, sasa nimpea nini? Unaona? Sasa inafanya unapea ule mtu ambao amewatolea kitu, unaona? Alafu another thing tena wananchi tunafanya, tumepressure sana politician to be our parents. Sasa I'm like, niko na problem, nitapigia huyu, nitapigia. Kwa sababu wewe ukitumia akili, mtu anatoa wapi hizo do za kupea watu? Asipoiba akuletee. Sasa it is like, hata nimeenda.
Asante, Jack. Lydia, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you for your nice program. I also would like to contribute that under President Kibaki's small government, everything was good. Under the post-election violence government, people never voted for them, but they pushed themselves in by violence. And they raised VAT on business rents, on housing, and then changed it to withholding. And everybody is now moving out from here, moving to there, moving out. Now see, it was so, when you managed your business, you were there for 10 years, 30 years, but with VAT now on the business rents, it is just corruption. It has made everybody bankrupt.
It's just corruption.
Post-election violence government and the BBI are the one and the same.
Thank you, Lydia. 0719-012-600. Philip, you hear from Jack and from Lydia. It starts with us as a people. We have created institutions such as yourselves. We have laws. We have beautiful laws. We say we have one of the most beautiful constitutions in the world, but still, we still have this problem of ethics and corruption.
Yeah, and that's what I meant when I said that it really is an uphill task when it comes to changing the mindset. But the other work that we are doing, the results are being seen. We don't go 1 week before we have arraigned a high-profile person in court or recovered some high-value assets. Yet that is maybe it's like treating the symptom. You're dealing with an illness, but you're not treating the illness. You're dealing with the symptoms. So I think in terms of the effect, apart from the deterrent effect, long term, we need to go back and change the hearts and minds. It was interesting to listen to Jack say that he's anticipating a vaccines
scandal.
Yep. Yes, and that is exactly that is another thing that, as I said, when City was talking like a professor. That is another thing. It's called banalization of corruption. Banalization of corruption is where it has become so commonplace. It's the thing we hear as the first thing we wake up in the morning. This show on the Situation Room starts in the morning, and I think by breakfast, everybody is talking about corruption. So that banalization of corruption is what makes people even lose hope. So Jack is even anticipating another scandal, and perhaps what we should be asking ourselves is this. Why are we waiting for the law enforcement agency to record statements, collect documents, make recommendations, charge people who work in a public institution? And that public institution has a responsibility to prevent corruption. And I think that's something that we should really be discussing. Every time EACC is charging people, they are public officers in public institutions. Is it that those public institutions do not have a responsibility to prevent corruption, or are they waiting? They steal until EACC shows up.
Yeah, it's somebody else's job to prevent and fight corruption. Let's hear from Okello before you come in, City. Okello in Nairobi, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the good program you are hosting this morning.
Asante.
And together with your guest who is also sensitizing us on what measures they are putting in place to combat corruption. My contribution this morning is that the corruption draws its origin from our historical background, and that traces its origin from colonial period, our colonial masters. It's clear that the system which we have today is not a system that we developed on our own. We've improved it from an original system that was imposed on us. A system imposed on particular people has its own limitations, and one of such limitations is what we are seeing today as endemic corruption that has deeply been rooted in our way of life. I wouldn't even call it a system, but it's a way of life now. City rightly put it. How
do we get out of this rut?
Well, my solution to this is what our guest talked about in earlier on is actually a peripheral response to one of the remedies that are put in place. That is education, public education, through what we call resocialization. That there is need for us to foster education right from primary school to university level. You realize that most of us who have engaged books a bit only realize that there is a topic called corruption at very advanced level, that's college level, tertiary education, or even university level, at undergraduate, masters, or those upper echelons of education. So there is need for us to ensure that our children are taught about corruption from very
from a young age,
basic level. That's from primary school up to the university, so that we know. And as our guest had rightly put it, in Western culture, throwing a bottle of soda out is something that is not it's unfathomed. It's through education and practice that such culture have now become part of our life.
That's true.
And that can only be done through education. You realize that combating corruption alone through prosecution is insufficient. And the best analogy I would give to this is a patient who goes to a doctor. A patient who goes to a doctor and is diagnosed with a disease. There are several remedies that the doctor would propose, one of which would be prescribed medication to assist in the management of an ailment. He would also propose some nutrition that you need to eat in this manner. Ensure that you have fruits, ensure that you have vegetable in your diet, ensure you take this amount of meat or this amount of protein, and then also ensure that you undertake some exercise. to improve your body system. So that's the approach that we should
holistic
adopt
one
as a country. Yes.
Thank you,
yes,
Okello. Let's hear from our guest and what he has to say about that. I mean, starting this from the very early age, Philip.
Yes, and Okello is right. There's some sort of colonial hangover background, and this is close to what CT was saying about his generation. There was, in fact, a law called the Prevention of Corruption Act, 1956. That is pre-independence.
Yeah.
Okay. But to be honest, it was like the Wild West in those days. You get what you can, and that is what CT was referring to, the conspicuous consumption. The amassing of wealth, because that Prevention of Corruption Act of 1956 only envisaged bribery. Okay, it did not envisage all these other things somebody could be doing, like abuse of office, conflict of interest, and so on and so forth. So that is more than 50 years ago, 60 years ago. That is where we started. And then when you come now to how to fight corruption in a holistic manner, as Okello has said, we need to look at everything. That's why we have the law enforcement on one side and the prevention on one side. I like the analogy of habits. For example, the littering. The reason I like these analogies is because it demonstrates that it is possible. So, for instance, the attitude of human beings towards the wearing of safety belts has transformed in one generation. If you remember when you were a child and maybe you were carried in a vehicle, your parents or relatives, nobody used to bother with those things. But now everybody gets into the vehicle. And by the way, if you have a young child and you put the child in the vehicle and you don't belt up the child is the one who will tell you, I need my safety belt on.
Yeah.
Same thing with things like smoking. People of a certain generation had no problem smoking. But now, even if you do smoke, you excuse yourself and go somewhere else where you're not going to affect somebody. So attitudes can change, and I believe attitudes towards corruption can change. The weakness with the law enforcement by itself, I'm not saying law enforcement has no use, but by itself, it will not solve the problem. Because if you think about it, and I'm not sure my history is right here, but the offense of robbery with violence did not carry a death penalty until, I think, in the 70s. So you enhance the penalty to death for robbery with violence. Are you telling me the incidences of robbery violence have reduced?
Not necessarily.
Actually,
Yes.
you're more likely to increase it. Even garden variety thugs and thieves and hoodlums are likely to up their game because they know that death is awaiting them at the end of the road. So they don't treat it like a Sunday school picnic.
Yes, and you see, because this person does not want any witnesses, the degree of violence in that robbery
will increase.
Is often extreme. So I think the caller was right. We need a holistic approach. We need to deal with everything, not just the medicine, but also the lifestyle.
Philip, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. And there's more and more conversations to have. For example, I think we need to have a deep conversation on how the law is structured. When you have somebody who has been convicted by a court of law and even sentenced to jail and hefty